I thought you were gone for good.
I'm back, Mom. I told you I'd make it.
Why didn't you call? We were so worried.
I wanted to surprise you. Why are you crying?
You said your business was struggling, so how could you afford that car?
I told you, I got a new deal. I can explain.
No, he wouldn't. Not after everything. The current deed shows you are the sole controller. Sole control? My son said. How is this possible? It's all in the trust, ma'am. It's yours.
The first time I realized my son had used my property to buy a $120,000 luxury SUV, I wasn't standing in a bank or a lawyer's office. I was standing at my kitchen window looking across the Tennessee land my husband and I had spent 34 years protecting. Mrs. Ellis, the loan officer, said carefully, "We need to verify the property your son listed in connection with his financing." Then she read my address. My hands went cold. Ryan had never asked permission. I had never signed anything. And just that morning, he'd sent me a picture of himself holding the keys to his beautiful new SUV. What Ryan didn't know was that the deed he'd found in his father's old files wasn't the document that controlled that land. Not anymore. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me what you would have done in my place. Would you confront your son immediately, or quietly find out exactly what he had done first? Leave your thoughts in the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if stories about family trust and the boundaries we sometimes have to fight to protect mean something to you, please like this video and subscribe. 6 months before that phone call, I still believed my son's sudden interest in my property came from concern. Looking back, I suppose that was the part that hurt the most. Ryan didn't begin by asking for money. He didn't arrive at my house carrying documents or talking about inheritance. He began by fixing a loose fence post. It was a Saturday morning in early spring, the kind of Tennessee morning David used to love. The grass was still wet from the night before, and a thin mist rested over the lower pasture behind my house. I was standing on the back porch with a cup of coffee when I saw Ryan's truck coming up the gravel drive. He climbed out wearing jeans work boots and an old Vanderbilt sweatshirt I remembered buying him years earlier. "Morning, Mom. What are you doing here this early?" He pointed toward the eastern fence. "You said that post was leaning." I smiled. "I said that 3 weeks ago." And I remembered. At 68, I had learned that when your grown child remembered something small, you treasured it, especially after losing your husband. David had been gone almost 2 years by then. We had been married for 41 years, and nearly every important memory of our marriage was tied to those 46 acres outside Franklin. When we bought the property, Franklin was nothing like it had become. Back then, people thought we were foolish for buying so much land. There was an old farmhouse, a collapsing equipment shed, 2 wells that worked when they felt like it, and enough weeds to make a person question every decision that had brought them there. But David saw something I didn't. Space. Possibility. A place where we could build a life that belonged to us. David ran a small land surveying business. I kept books for a construction company in town before eventually helping him with his accounts in the evenings. Neither of us came from money. We saved. We repaired instead of replacing. We bought used furniture. For the first 7 years, every extra dollar seemed to disappear into that property. A new roof, drainage work, fencing, a rebuilt barn, property taxes. There were years when I wondered if the land owned us instead of the other way around. Then Ryan was born. Suddenly, every sacrifice seemed worth it. I could still picture him at 8 years old running through the field behind the house with David chasing him. At 12, Ryan learned to drive an old tractor badly enough that I nearly lost 10 years off my life watching him. At 17, he told us he couldn't wait to leave Franklin and live somewhere exciting. David laughed when I cried after Ryan went to college. "He'll come back," he told me. "How do you know?" "Because everybody spends half their youth trying to get away from home and half their adulthood trying to figure out why they miss it." David was right. Ryan eventually returned to the Nashville area and became a real estate agent. For a while, he did very well, and Franklin changed around us. Open fields became neighborhoods. 2-lane roads became busy corridors. Developers started calling. At first, the offers were almost amusing, then they stopped being amusing. One company offered us nearly 3 times what we had originally paid for the entire property just for 12 acres. David turned them down. Another developer called the following year. Then another. By the time David died, letters arrived regularly. Some were polite, some were persistent. A few made numbers large enough that I would sit at the kitchen table staring at them before putting them into a drawer. But I didn't need to sell. The house was paid for. I had retirement savings. David had planned carefully. And more importantly, I wasn't ready. People who see land only as numbers on a page sometimes have trouble understanding that. To me, those acres contained a marriage. After David died, I could walk to the old oak near the back pasture and remember the picnic table that once stood there. I could look toward the barn and remember Ryan coming home covered in mud. Selling the land would have meant more than signing a deed. It would have meant closing a chapter I wasn't ready to close. Ryan knew that, or I thought he did. That Saturday morning, he spent almost 3 hours repairing the fence. Afterward, I made sandwiches and we ate at the kitchen table. "You shouldn't be handling all this by yourself," he said. "I'm not handling all of it myself. I have people, you know what I mean." I looked at him. Ryan had David's eyes. That had become both comforting and painful after my husband died. "I'm doing fine. I know you are." He smiled. "I just worry about you." There was nothing suspicious about those words. Not then. Over the next several weeks, Ryan visited more frequently. He changed a light fixture in the hallway. He checked the roof after a storm. Once he drove me into Nashville for lunch because he said we hadn't spent enough time together. I loved it. I had spent so much time after David's death learning how to live without one person that I didn't realize how badly I wanted to feel closer to the other. Then the questions began. They were casual at first. One afternoon, Ryan was helping me sort mail when he picked up the county tax notice. Taxes went up again. "A little." "What are you paying now?" I told him. He whistled. "That's going to keep climbing, Mom. Especially with everything they're building around here. I can afford it." "I know. I'm just saying." He put the notice down. A week later, he asked whether there was still a mortgage on the property. "No. Completely paid. Your father made the last payment years ago." "That's good." He nodded as though he were merely pleased for me. Then came another question. "Did Dad ever refinance it?" "Why, I'm a realtor, Mom. Property is what I talk about all day." I laughed. "I suppose that's true." He smiled and changed the subject. The questions continued. Had David updated the deed before he died? Was everything in my name now? Did I have an updated will? Had probate been complicated? At first I answered whatever I knew. Eventually I teased him. "You planning to start charging me for financial advice?" Ryan laughed. "No. I just want you protected." "I am protected." "I know, but Dad handled a lot of this stuff." That sentence bothered me slightly. Not because it was entirely wrong. David had handled much of our long-term estate planning. I understood the broad decisions we made together, but he had been the one who enjoyed sitting with attorneys and reading every paragraph of legal documents. I trusted him. After 41 years, there were things each of us simply handled. I knew every household account down to the dollar. David knew every boundary line and legal description on our property. Ryan leaned back in his... "You should probably let me organize the property records sometime. I already have them organized. You know what I mean? Actually, I didn't, but I let it go." Then something else began happening. Ryan started talking about how valuable the land had become. Not directly. He would mention a nearby sale. 20 acres over on Carter's Creek went for almost $4 million. Or he would point toward new construction while we drove. "You know what those developers would pay for access through this area." Sometimes he sounded like a son protecting his mother. Other times he sounded like a realtor evaluating an opportunity. I told myself I was being unfair. Ryan had grown up on that land. Surely it meant something to him too. One Sunday afternoon we walked toward the old barn together. The sun was low and the fields had that soft golden-green color Tennessee gets in late spring. Ryan stopped and looked across the property. "You ever think about selling?" "Not seriously. You wouldn't need all 46 acres. I don't need most of the things I love." He laughed. "That sounds like something Dad would say." "It probably is." Ryan shoved his hands into his pockets. You could sell part of it and never worry about money again. I don't worry about money now. I mean, really never worry. I turned toward him. Ryan, why are you so interested? His expression changed immediately. Interested in what? My land. Our land, he said automatically. The words were quiet. Maybe he didn't even realize he had said them. I stared at him. He corrected himself. I mean family land. That's different. Of course. He smiled, but something about the conversation stayed with me. That evening after Ryan left, I went into David's old office. I hadn't changed much in that room. His desk remained near the window. His surveying maps were still stored in the cabinet. On one shelf sat several document boxes containing decades of property records. I ran my fingers across one labeled Ellis Property. For a moment I considered opening it. Then I stopped. What was I looking for? Evidence that my own son cared too much about his inheritance. I felt ashamed for even thinking it. I turned off the light and went to bed. 2 days later, Ryan called. We talked about ordinary things for nearly 20 minutes. Brooke's work, a house he was trying to sell, a restaurant he thought I would like. Then just before hanging up, he asked another question. His voice was casual, almost too casual. Mom, Dad never put the land in anything complicated, did he? I went quiet. What do you mean by complicated, A corporation, partnership, some kind of trust. I tried to remember. David and I had signed estate documents years earlier, but I couldn't recall every detail. Why are you asking? No reason. There was a pause. Then Ryan laughed softly. Occupational curiosity. Forget I asked. We said goodbye. But I didn't forget. I stood alone in my kitchen afterward, staring through the window toward 46 acres of land my husband had spent his life protecting. For the first time, my son's questions no longer sounded like concern. They sounded like research, and I had no idea what Ryan Ellis was trying to find. The image Ryan couldn't afford. 3 days after Ryan asked whether his father had ever put our land into a trust, I told myself I was imagining things. That was easier than admitting the alternative. A mother can recognize 100 warning signs in a stranger and still find excuses for her own child. Ryan had always been ambitious. Even as a teenager, he cared about how people saw him. David used to joke that our son could turn taking out the trash into a competition if he thought someone was watching. For years, that ambition had served him well. After college, Ryan bounced between sales jobs before getting his real estate license. Once he found real estate, something clicked. He knew how to talk to people without making them feel pressured. He remembered names, children anniversaries, and tiny details clients mentioned once and forgot themselves. During his best years, he sold beautiful homes around Franklin and Brentwood. He wore tailored jackets. He took clients to expensive lunches. I belonged to networking groups I had never heard of, and he drove a respectable 3-year-old SUV that was fully paid for. Then the market around him changed. I didn't understand every detail, but I understood enough to know Ryan's commissions had become less predictable. Deals took longer. Some buyers disappeared. Listings sat. Several transactions Ryan expected to close fell apart. He never admitted he was struggling. Instead, he talked more about the deal that was coming next. One afternoon, he came to my house wearing a navy blazer and carrying 2 coffees. Peace offering, he said, setting one in front of me. For what? For bothering you about paperwork. I studied him. So you know you were bothering me. He smiled. Apparently, I inherited Dad's inability to leave things alone. That made me laugh despite myself. For nearly an hour, we talked about nothing important. Then Ryan pulled out his phone. Look at this. It was a photograph of a luxury SUV. Black exterior, cream leather interior, polished dashboard. The kind of vehicle I associated with professional athletes and people whose houses had wine cellars. Pretty, I said. Pretty. He laughed. That's all. What do you want me to say? That it's incredible. It looks expensive. His smile widened. About $120,000 depending on the package. I nearly spilled my coffee. For a car. It's not just a car. Does it fly, Mom? For $120,000, I'd expect wings. Ryan shook his head, laughing. Then his expression became more serious. You don't understand the market I'm trying to get into. What market requires a car that costs more than some people's houses' luxury clients? He leaned forward. If I want million-dollar listings, I need to look like I belong in that world. I stared at him. Since when does being good at your job depend on what's parked in the driveway? Since people started judging you before you ever shake their hand? There was bitterness in his voice. He told me about a potential client who had chosen another realtor. The other agent drove a Range Rover, wore an expensive watch, and seemed connected to wealthier circles. You think he got the listing because of his car, not because of the car alone. The image. Ryan tapped the screen. Clients want to believe the person selling their $3 million house understands their lifestyle. Do you? He looked offended. Do I what? Understand their lifestyle. I understand real estate. That wasn't my question. Ryan sat back. I immediately regretted the sharpness in my voice. I'm not criticizing you. It sounds like you are. I'm asking whether you're trying to become successful or trying to look successful. His jaw tightened. For a few seconds I saw something beneath the confidence. Fear. Then it disappeared. You and Dad grew up in a different world. That may be true. Everything is branding now. He picked up his coffee. My car has 200,000 miles on it, and it's paid for. That doesn't help when I pull up next to someone who looks like they're already making $500,000 a year. I thought about David. My husband had spent most of his career driving trucks with mud on the floor. People trusted him because he knew where property lines were not, because his dashboard impressed them. But I knew comparing Ryan to his father would only make him defensive. So I asked the question I should have avoided. How much would you need for the down payment? Ryan looked at me quickly. Too quickly. Why, I'm curious. He hesitated. 25, maybe 30,000. I nodded slowly. That's a lot of money. It's an investment. So you said. Ryan looked down at his coffee. Then he said I could pay you back. There it was. I wished I hadn't opened the door. Ryan, I'm not asking you to buy it. You're asking me for $30,000. Loan me $30,000. With commissions you just told me are unpredictable. He frowned. I didn't say I was broke. I didn't say you were. You're acting like I can't manage my finances. No. I'm acting like I'm 68 years old. He stared at me. I softened my voice. Your father and I saved carefully, so I wouldn't have to depend on you someday. Every dollar I take out of my retirement now is money that stops protecting me later. I'm your son. Exactly. His expression changed. I reached across the table. I never want you to become responsible for supporting me because I gave away the money meant to support myself. Ryan withdrew his hand. You have the land. My chest tightened. What does that mean? Nothing. You said it for a reason. He sighed. I mean, you're not exactly without assets. Assets don't pay grocery bills unless I sell them. And you could sell a few acres without changing your life. There it was again, the land. I sat back. I'm not selling property so you can buy a luxury car. Ryan's face hardened. I never asked you to. You were getting close. Silence filled the kitchen. Finally he stood. Forget it. Ryan. No, seriously. Forget I said anything. He put his phone into his pocket. I'll figure it out myself. He kissed my cheek before leaving, but the gesture felt mechanical. For the next week I heard very little from him. Then Brooke called. She sounded cheerful. Brooke and I had always been cordial. She was bright, polished, and far more interested in fashion than I had ever been, but she had never treated me badly. During our conversation, she mentioned an upcoming real estate event. Ryan's been stressed about it, she said. I thinks this could finally get him in front of the right people. I hope it does. He needs a win. Something in her voice caught my attention. Is everything all right? Of course. Too fast. Then she laughed. You know Ryan. He wants everything yesterday. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table thinking about those words. He needs a win. Not wants, needs. A few days later, Ryan came by while I was out buying groceries. I knew because he texted me. Stopped by to check the back gate. All good. I smiled when I read it. See, I told myself, you're turning normal things into suspicions. But when I returned home, something bothered me. David's office door was open. I usually kept it closed. I carried my groceries into the kitchen, put away the cold items, then walked back down the hallway. Nothing looked disturbed. The desk was untouched. David's framed photograph remained beside the lamp. I almost left. Then I noticed the document box, Ellis property. It was sitting slightly crooked on the shelf. I knew that sounded ridiculous. A cardboard box turned perhaps 2 inches. But after David died, I had become strangely protective of his office. I knew how things sat. I pulled the box down. Inside were old surveys, tax documents, title records, and deeds. I went through them slowly. Nothing obvious was missing. Then I noticed several folders were no longer in the order I remembered. My stomach tightened. I called Ryan. He answered on the 4th ring. Hey, Mom, were you in your father's office? Silence. Only a second. Maybe less. Yeah. Why, I needed the bathroom and noticed the door was open. The bathroom is across the hall. Another pause. I was looking for an old survey. What survey? The north boundary. A client asked me something about nearby parcels. You went through Dad's files for a client. Mom, I grew up there. I didn't think I needed permission to look at a survey. I hated the way that sentence made me feel unreasonable. I would have appreciated you asking. Okay. His tone cooled. I'm sorry. Did you take anything? No. Did you photograph anything? The silence was longer this time. Why would I photograph anything? That isn't an answer. He sighed. I might have taken a picture of the old deed. I don't remember. My fingers tightened around the phone. Why? Because property records are useful in my business. My property records. Mom, you're making this sound strange. I didn't make you photograph my deed. It's public information anyway. Technically, I knew he was right. That didn't make me feel better. Delete it. What, the photograph? You're serious? Yes. Ryan laughed once without humor. Fine. Then he hung up. I stood alone in David's office holding the phone. For several minutes I stared at that box. I could still smell the faint trace of cedar from the shelves David had built himself. I wanted desperately to believe Ryan's explanation. Maybe he really had needed the survey. Maybe he had photographed the deed out of professional curiosity. Maybe grief had made me suspicious. So I put everything back. I slid the box onto the shelf. And I chose to trust my son. What I didn't know was that Ryan had already taken the photographs he needed, and less than a month later, he would pull into my driveway behind the wheel of a vehicle I had just told him I would not help him buy. The $120,000 surprise. The first thing I noticed was the shine. Late afternoon sunlight flashed across the hood as the black SUV turned into my gravel driveway, so polished and out of place that for a second I thought someone had taken a wrong turn. Then the vehicle slowed beside my porch. The driver's door opened. Ryan stepped out. I was wearing sunglasses and a charcoal jacket, and the smile on his face belonged to the boy who used to run into the kitchen holding up a report card he knew would make his father proud. Well, he called. I stood behind the screen door. For a moment I didn't answer. Then I walked outside. The SUV was even more impressive up close. Black paint, huge wheels, cream leather visible through the windows. Everything about it looked expensive. Very expensive. You bought it. Ryan took off his sunglasses. I told you I'd figure it out. I walked slowly around the front. The same one you showed me, better package. My stomach tightened. How much better? He laughed. Don't start. I haven't started anything. You're making the face. What face? The mom face. I've had the same face for 68 years. That made him laugh. For a few seconds I laughed too. I wanted to be happy for him. That is important to understand. When your child is 41, some part of you still remembers the little boy underneath the adult. You remember scraped knees and school pictures and the first time he drove away alone. So when Ryan stood beside that beautiful vehicle looking proud of himself, my first instinct wasn't suspicion. It was relief. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe the missing commissions had come through. Maybe the client Brooke mentioned had turned into something bigger. Maybe Ryan really had figured it out himself. You want to see inside? Before I could answer, he opened the passenger door. The interior smelled like new leather. There were screens everywhere. Massage seats, Ryan said. You needed those for selling houses? Absolutely. And this, I pointed at another control. Air suspension. For the difficult roads of suburban Tennessee. He grinned. You're impossible. I smiled. But I kept thinking about the number. $120,000. Maybe more now that he had purchased the better package. I ran my fingers lightly over the stitching. How did you qualify for this? His smile weakened. What you told me business was slow. Business was slow. Was I've got some things developing. What things, clients? He closed the passenger door. A couple good prospects. One strong listing. And I found a financing structure that made sense. What kind of financing structure? Ryan leaned against the SUV. Mom, can you just be happy for me for 5 minutes? I am happy if this isn't going to hurt you. There it is. What the condition? There is no condition. There always is with you. That surprised me. With me, you and Dad never understood leverage. I almost laughed. Your father spent 40 years working around land transactions. I think he understood leverage. Not the way business works now. His tone had changed. I wasn't celebrating anymore. He was defending himself. I looked at him for a long moment. Did you borrow against something? Ryan pushed away from the SUV. It's a car loan. That wasn't my question. Why does it matter? Because 3 weeks ago you asked me for $30,000, and you said no. I did. So I solved the problem. He spread his hands. Isn't that what you wanted? I should have pushed harder. Instead, guilt stopped me. Maybe I was treating him like a teenager. Ryan was a grown man. He had a career, a wife, his own financial life. I didn't have the right to demand explanations for every purchase simply because I thought it was foolish. All right, I said. His shoulders relaxed. All right, if you can afford it, then congratulations. The smile returned. Thank you. He hugged me. And I let myself believe him. That evening he took me for a drive. The SUV was quiet enough that the outside world seemed to disappear when the doors closed. Ryan drove through Franklin, pointing out new developments and expensive homes. He seemed energized. This is where the business is going, he said. Higher-end clients. Relocation. Investors. People don't just hire a realtor anymore. They hire someone whose judgment they trust. And the car proves your judgment. It tells them I'm successful. I looked out the window. Wouldn't being successful tell them you're successful? He laughed. You really don't understand branding. Apparently not. At a traffic light, Ryan glanced at me. You know what Dad's problem was? I turned toward him. The question irritated me immediately. Your father didn't have a problem. You know what I mean? No. Tell me. He never cared what people thought. That sounds like a strength. Sometimes. The light changed. Ryan accelerated. But sometimes perception opens doors. I looked at my son. For the first time, I wondered how much of his life was built around opening doors into rooms he couldn't afford to stay in. 3 nights later, Ryan and Brooke invited me to dinner in Nashville. The restaurant was the sort of place where the menu didn't put dollar signs beside the prices. I nearly declined, but Brooke sounded genuinely excited. We're celebrating, she said. What are we celebrating? Ryan's next chapter. That phrase stayed with me. His next chapter. When I arrived, they were already seated. Ryan wore a new jacket. Brooke looked elegant in a cream blouse and gold earrings. They seemed happy. That made me happy. For the first half hour, the evening felt normal. Ryan talked about networking opportunities. Brooke told me about a hotel project her company was hoping to land. We ordered dinner. Then Brooke lifted her wine glass. To Ryan. He smiled. And to Mom for raising me right. I laughed. I don't know if I can take credit for the vehicle. Brooke smiled at me. You can take credit for more than that. Ryan's eyes moved toward her. It happened so quickly I almost missed it. A warning. What does that mean? I asked. Brooke looked confused. Nothing bad. She reached across the table and touched my hand. I just think it's wonderful that you're helping him. The room seemed to grow quieter, helping him with what Ryan interrupted. Brooke. What? You're making it sound like Mom bought the car. I didn't say that. Brooke turned back to me. I meant the family property. Ryan said it finally gave you guys some breathing room. My hand stopped beside my water glass. Family property. Brooke's smile disappeared. Ryan put his fork down. She misunderstood. I don't think I did. Brooke looked between us. You said the land gave you financial flexibility. I said family assets strengthen your overall financial picture. My heartbeat changed. Not faster exactly. Heavier. I looked directly at Ryan. What family assets? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Mom, this is boring financial stuff. Then it should be easy to explain. Brooke shifted in her chair. I think I accidentally stepped into something. No, I said gently. You didn't. Ryan reached for his wine. Can we not do this here? Do what interrogate me. I asked one question. You've been asking questions since I bought the car. Because you asked me for $30,000 less than a month ago. Brooke turned toward him. You asked your mother for money. Ryan's jaw tightened. It was a conversation. You told me financing was already handled. It is handled. Neither of us spoke. The waiter approached, noticed the tension, and quietly moved away again. I lowered my voice. Did you use my property for this vehicle? No. The answer came immediately. Too immediately. I watched him. Then what did Brooke mean? Ryan exhaled. I have future interests. Family assets. Professional lenders look at your complete financial profile. My land is not part of your financial profile. I didn't say it was. You just called it a future interest. Brooke looked genuinely alarmed now. Ryan, what exactly did you submit? He gave her a sharp look. Can we please stop? That was the moment my suspicion became something heavier. Ryan wasn't confused. He wasn't offended. He was afraid. And fear usually meant there was something to find. I didn't confront him further. Instead, I picked up my fork. All right. Ryan blinked. All right, you said it's handled. It is. Then let's finish dinner. The relief on his face told me more than another argument would have. I changed the subject. Brooke tried to follow. Eventually conversation returned, although it never became comfortable again. When dinner ended, Ryan insisted on walking me to my car. Mom. I opened the driver's door. Yes. You know I would never do anything to hurt you. I looked at him. There are sentences you don't worry about until someone feels the need to say them. I hope not. I mean it. Then there's nothing to worry about. He kissed my cheek. I drove home alone. When I turned onto my road, the fields appeared beyond the headlights. My fields. David's fields. The place where Ryan had grown up. I thought about his questions. The property taxes, the mortgage, the deed, the will, the trust. Then I remembered the document box in David's office. The folders out of order. The photograph Ryan admitted taking. I parked beside the house but didn't go inside. For several minutes I sat in the dark with my hands resting on the steering wheel. Brooke's words repeated in my mind. The family property finally gave us some breathing room. Eventually I looked toward the fields. Nothing had changed out there. The same fences, the same barn, the same land David and I had protected for more than 3 decades. But something had changed inside me. I no longer wondered whether Ryan had been researching my property. I knew he had. The only question was what he had done with what he found. And as I pictured that gleaming black SUV sitting in his driveway, it no longer looked like proof that my son had finally become successful. It looked like evidence. Address on his loan. The call came the following Tuesday at 10:17 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I was standing at the kitchen counter writing it on a grocery list when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Normally I would have let it go to voicemail. That morning I answered. Mrs. Morgan Ellis. Yes, my name is Laura Mitchell. I'm a senior loan officer with Heritage Capital Finance. I'm calling regarding a verification matter connected to Ryan Ellis. My pen stopped moving. My son, yes ma'am. Is something wrong? There was a brief pause. I'm hoping you can help me clarify something. Something in her tone changed the air around me. She wasn't calling to sell me anything. She wasn't making a routine courtesy call. She was being careful. What do you need clarified? It concerns a property listed in documentation associated with Mr. Ellis's financing. My stomach tightened. What property? Laura read the address. My address. For several seconds I said nothing. Through the kitchen window I could see the eastern fence line where Ryan had repaired the post months earlier. Mrs. Ellis, I'm here. I want to make sure I have the correct property. You do. And you currently reside there for 34 years. Another pause. Thank you. Why is my property connected to Ryan's financing? Laura chose her next words carefully. Mr. Ellis provided documentation indicating a future beneficial interest in family-owned real property. We're reviewing certain representations in the file. Representations? Yes. What does that mean in ordinary English? She hesitated. It means we need to verify the nature of his interest. I set down my pen. Did my son tell you he owns my land? Not exactly. Those two words frightened me more than yes would have. What exactly did he tell you? I'm limited in what I can discuss without authorization. But because your property appears in supporting documentation, I needed to confirm certain information with you. Did he use my property as collateral? Not in the conventional sense. Again, language that sounded designed to avoid saying too much. Laura, I'm 68 years old. I spent most of my working life keeping books. Please don't protect me from financial vocabulary. Her tone softened. I understand. Did Ryan borrow money against my property? There is no recorded mortgage from you in our file. Did I sign anything? Not that I can see. Relief came first, then confusion. Then why are you calling me? Because the file includes documents relating to the Ellis property, including an older deed and an affidavit describing Mr. Ellis as a future family beneficiary with an anticipated interest. My hand tightened around the edge of the counter. An anticipated interest. Yes, he anticipates inheriting it. I can't interpret his intentions for you. I can. The words came out sharper than I intended. Laura remained silent. I closed my eyes. Ryan's voice returned to me. Our land. Family assets. Future interests. It's public information anyway. What did he use that information for? The property formed part of the broader financial profile submitted during underwriting. For the car, I can confirm the financing relates to the vehicle purchase. There it was. The ridiculous black SUV, the massage seats, the polished wheels, the cream leather, $120,000 of image. And somewhere underneath it was my address. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Does your company believe Ryan owns my property? That is one of the issues we are verifying. He doesn't. Laura didn't respond immediately. He does not own my land, I repeated. Thank you. That's important information. And I never gave him permission to represent otherwise. I understand. No, I need you to understand exactly what I'm saying. I never signed a guarantee. I never pledged my property. I never agreed to secure his vehicle. I'm noting that. Can you send me whatever documents involve me or my property? There are privacy limitations concerning your son's full application. I'm not asking for his entire application. I'm asking for documents involving property I own. That request is reasonable. I'll need to speak with our compliance department. Please do. Laura asked for my email address. Before we ended the call, I stopped her. One more question. Yes, why did you call? She was quiet for a moment. Because the ownership information we obtained during verification did not align cleanly with the documentation provided. My heartbeat seemed to pause. What ownership information? I would prefer not to speculate until our review is complete. But something didn't match. Yes. After we hung up, I remained at the kitchen table. I didn't call Ryan. That surprised even me. A younger version of myself would have. I would have demanded answers before the phone cooled in my hand. But age teaches you something anger never does. Information is easier to gather before people know you're looking. So I waited. The documents arrived electronically that afternoon. I printed everything Laura was permitted to provide. There were 11 pages. I spread them across the dining room table. The first thing I recognized was the deed. The same old deed from David's files. My name. David's name. Legal description. Parcel information. I had seen it many times, but attached to it was something I had never seen. An affidavit signed by Ryan. It did not say he currently owned the property. That would have been an obvious lie. Instead, the language was more slippery. Ryan described himself as the only child of David and Morgan Ellis and a future beneficiary of substantial family real estate holdings. He stated that the property was debt-free to the best of his knowledge. He referred to an anticipated beneficial interest. Every individual sentence seemed carefully designed to remain one step away from an outright falsehood. Together, they created a picture. Ryan Ellis was not merely a realtor with inconsistent commissions. He was the future heir to valuable debt-free Tennessee land. I read the affidavit 3 times. Then I found another page, an asset summary. The property appeared under a section labeled Family, Expected Beneficial Interests. No dollar amount was guaranteed, but a valuation estimate had been attached. I stared at the number, $3.8 million. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because Ryan had apparently decided what my land was worth, what he would someday receive, and how that future should help him today. Without asking me, without even telling me. I picked up my phone. Ryan's name was at the top of my recent calls. My thumb hovered over it. Then I put the phone down. Not yet. I needed to understand exactly what he had done. I called Laura back. She answered 20 minutes later. I received the documents. Good. I have questions. I expected you might. This affidavit. Does it make my land collateral not by itself? So the lender cannot take my land if Ryan stops paying. Based on the documents I have reviewed, I do not see an enforceable lien against your property. I breathed out slowly. Then what did this accomplish? It supported his overall underwriting profile. Meaning a borrower's financial strength can be evaluated using more than current income. Assets, reserves, guarantees, expected liquidity events, and other factors may influence how a file is viewed. But an inheritance isn't an asset until somebody dies. That is one reason the file is under review. The bluntness surprised me. So Ryan made himself look wealthier than he is. I wouldn't characterize intent. You don't have to. I looked again at the papers. Did he forge my signature anywhere, not on anything I have seen? That should have comforted me. Instead, it made what he had done feel more calculated. Ryan had been careful. He hadn't forged my name. He hadn't created a fake deed. He had taken real documents and arranged them around an assumption. The assumption that one day my property would become his. Mrs. Ellis, Laura said, there's something else. I sat straighter. What the deed your son submitted appears to be an older instrument. I looked down at it. How old the county records indicate subsequent activity involving at least part of the property. I frowned. What kind of activity that's outside the scope of what I can interpret for you? You may want to speak with an attorney familiar with your estate records. My eyes moved toward the hallway, toward David's office. Suddenly I remembered Ryan's question. Dad never put the land in anything complicated, did he? A corporation, a partnership, a trust. He hadn't been asking randomly. He had been trying to determine whether the deed he found told the whole story. And the truth was, I didn't know either. David had handled much of our estate planning. I had signed documents beside him. I remembered meetings, folders, conversations about protecting the property. But grief had blurred some details and years had blurred others. I thanked Laura. Then I made one request. Please don't call Ryan yet. She paused. I can't promise how our internal review proceeds. I understand. I'm not asking you to hide anything. I'm asking you not to tell him that I'm questioning the documents unless your procedures require it. I understand. When the call ended, I gathered the pages into a neat stack. I carried them into David's office and placed them on his desk. His photograph sat beside the lamp. I was smiling in it, sunburned from some long-forgotten summer, wearing the battered baseball cap I had threatened to throw away 100 times. You knew something, didn't you? I whispered. Of course the photograph didn't answer. I opened the drawer where I kept important contacts. Near the back was a business card. Patricia Coleman, Estate Planning and Trust Administration. Patricia had known David for more than 20 years. She had prepared our wills. She had attended his funeral, and I hadn't spoken to her in nearly a year. I dialed the number. Her assistant answered. Coleman Estate Law. My name is Morgan Ellis. I need to speak with Patricia. Is this regarding an existing estate matter? I looked at Ryan's affidavit. At my address. At the old deed he had photographed without permission. Yes, I said. I think it is. A few minutes later, Patricia came on the line. Morgan. Is everything all right? I'm not sure. What happened? My son used documents from our property to help finance a luxury vehicle. Silence. Then Patricia asked a question I wasn't expecting. What documents? An old deed. Another silence. Longer this time. Old, she repeated. Yes. Patricia's voice changed. Do you still have the Ellis property binder David left with you? I have several boxes. Not the boxes. I frowned. What binder? The trust binder. My entire body went still. I don't remember a trust binder. Patricia exhaled slowly. All right. What does that mean? It means I think you should come to my office. Why bring everything the lender sent you? I looked down at the deed. Patricia, does Ryan own any part of this land? No. The answer was immediate, clear, absolute. I gripped the phone tighter. Does he have the right to promise any part of it? No. Then why did the county records show something different from this deed? Patricia was quiet for several seconds. When she finally answered, her voice was calm. Because the deed Ryan found isn't the document that controls the most important part of your property anymore. I stared through David's office window toward the fields. For the first time since Laura's call, my anger gave way to something else. Confusion. Because Ryan had gone searching through his father's records believing he had discovered proof of his future inheritance. But apparently, David had left behind something my son had never found. And perhaps something I had never fully understood myself. The file David left behind. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same three things. Ryan standing beside that black luxury SUV. The old deed spread across my dining room table. And David's photograph sitting silently on the desk, while Patricia's words repeated in my head. The deed Ryan found isn't the document that controls the most important part of your property anymore. By 7 the next morning, I had already made coffee twice and finished neither cup. My appointment with Patricia was at 10. I arrived 20 minutes early. Her office sat in a renovated brick building just outside downtown Franklin, surrounded by the kind of development David used to point at while driving and say, "Give them 10 years and they'll put a subdivision on the moon." Patricia's receptionist recognized me immediately. "It's good to see you, Mrs. Ellis. I wish it were under different circumstances." She gave me a sympathetic smile. "Patricia is expecting you." I carried a canvas tote containing everything Laura had sent me. The weight of 11 pages shouldn't have felt heavy. It did. Patricia met me at her office door. She was 63, silver-haired, practical, and still wore the same rectangular glasses she had worn when David and I first hired her years earlier. She hugged me. Not a professional handshake. A hug. That nearly broke me. "You look tired," she said. "I am. Come sit down." Her office hadn't changed much. Law books lined one wall. Family photographs sat on another. On the corner of her desk was a framed picture of Patricia and David standing beside a charity golf tournament sign 15 years earlier. Seeing him there caught me off guard. Patricia noticed. "I keep meaning to update these photographs." "Don't." She looked at me. "I like seeing him." "So do I." I sat across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Patricia became a lawyer again. "Show me exactly what the lender sent." I opened the tote. She started with Ryan's affidavit. Her expression remained neutral as she read. Then she reached the asset summary. Her eyebrows lifted. 3.8 million. That was my reaction. Did Ryan obtain an appraisal not from me? She made a note. Then she picked up the deed. That was when her expression changed. She looked at the first page, turned to the second, then back again. Where did he get this? David's office. Original a copy. He photographed it. Patricia leaned back. And he never asked you no. She removed her glasses. Morgan, before we go any further, I need to ask you something. All right. Does Ryan know about the restructuring David completed? I stared at her. What restructuring? Patricia's face told me my answer mattered. The land. I know we did estate planning. I'm asking specifically about the land. I searched my memory. David and I had sat in this office many times. We updated wills, discussed beneficiaries, signed powers of attorney, talked about what would happen if one of us became incapacitated. There had also been conversations about the property, but they had happened years earlier when David was healthy, and I believed we had decades left. I remember signing something involving a trust. Patricia nodded. Do you remember why David wanted to protect the land? From what? I looked toward the window. Developers, maybe partly. The word landed heavily. What was the other part? Patricia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood. Give me a minute. She crossed the office and disappeared through a side door. I sat alone. On Patricia's desk was a brass clock. I watched the second hand move. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. When Patricia returned, she was carrying a thick, dark blue binder. She placed it on the desk between us. Gold lettering ran across the front. Ellis Family Land Trust. My throat tightened. I knew the binder. Not clearly, but enough. I've seen that. I thought you might remember. She opened it. Inside were tabbed sections, copies of deeds, trust documents, amendments, and maps. Near the front was a signature page. David Ellis. Morgan Ellis. My signature. I touched it. When did we do this? 11 years ago. I stared at the date. 11 years. Ryan would have been 30. David had still been working. I was still keeping books part-time. Life had been ordinary enough that legal paperwork felt like something meant for a distant future. I remember coming here, I said. You and David came 3 times. Why don't I remember all of it? Because most people don't spend 11 years memorizing estate documents. A small smile crossed her face. And because David loved details enough for both of you. That was true. Painfully true. I looked at his signature. What exactly did we do? Patricia turned the binder toward me. You and David had created the Ellis Family Land Trust. Later you transferred 31 of the 46 acres into it. 31, yes. Why not? The house and surrounding acreage remained outside the trust for flexibility. The strategically valuable parcels went in. Strategically valuable. Patricia pulled out a map. Colored boundary lines divided the property. She pointed to a long section running toward the northern road. This corridor. I recognized it immediately. Mostly pasture. Trees near one edge. Nothing special to look at. But David had understood land differently. He said that area might matter someday, I whispered. Patricia looked at me. Yes. The memory returned. Not all at once. Pieces. David standing in our kitchen with a county map. Road expansion. Future development. Access. Drainage. Words I had half listened to while balancing accounts. I had trusted him because that was his world. Patricia tapped the old deed Ryan had submitted. This reflects the earlier ownership structure. Then she pulled another document from the binder. This is the later deed. I compared them. The legal descriptions were different. The dates were different. The grantee was different. The Ellis Family Land Trust. So Ryan found an old deed. Yes. Could he have known there was another one? County records would have shown subsequent transfers if he performed a proper title search. But if he only searched Dad's files, he could have convinced himself this was enough. I thought about Ryan photographing those pages, his questions. Dad never put the land in anything complicated, did he? He had suspected something. He asked me about a trust. Patricia looked up sharply. When? A few months ago. What did you tell him? That I didn't remember. She sat back. That may explain why he used this. Because he thought there wasn't one possibly. I looked at the affidavit again. Future beneficiary. Anticipated interest. Patricia, I need you to tell me plainly. Does Ryan own any of the 31 acres? No. Can he borrow against them? No. Can he promise them to anyone? No. Can he force me to sell? No. Each answer loosened something in my chest. Then another thought occurred to me. If David died, shouldn't his share have passed to Ryan? No. Why not? Because the trust owns those acres. David's death did not turn trust property into Ryan's personal property. I stared at her. So who controls it? Patricia turned several pages. You do. I almost laughed. You became controlling trustee after David's death. I thought I was just managing things. You are managing them, legally. She pointed to the language. You have authority to administer the trust according to its terms. I read the paragraph. The words felt formal and unfamiliar. Trustee, beneficiary, fiduciary duty, discretion. How much power does that actually give me? A great deal with responsibilities attached. Can I sell the land under certain conditions? Can Ryan know? Can he tell a lender it will eventually belong to him? He can say he is a beneficiary. He cannot honestly represent that he has a guaranteed right to receive specific property outright. I leaned back. The irony was almost unbearable. Ryan had gone through David's files searching for proof that the land would someday become his. Instead, he had found a document that had been replaced years earlier. What exactly is Ryan entitled to? Patricia was quiet. That question has a longer answer. Something in her voice made me uneasy. What does that mean? It means beneficiary does not necessarily mean what Ryan thinks it means. She turned deeper into the binder. I noticed several sections marked distribution provisions and trustee authority. Before I could ask, Patricia closed the binder gently. Let's take this one step at a time. No. She looked at me. I've spent months taking things one step at a time while my son apparently planned around my property. My voice trembled. I want to know why David did this. Patricia studied me for several seconds. Then she asked, do you remember when Ryan wanted to invest in that restaurant I did? He had been 29. A friend convinced him they could open an upscale restaurant in Nashville. David thought the numbers were terrible. Ryan invested anyway. He lost nearly $40,000. He was young, yes, and he learned from it. Patricia didn't respond. My stomach tightened. What else? David came to see me afterward. Without me, for an initial conversation, yes. You joined the later meetings. Why? Patricia folded her hands. He was worried. About Ryan, yes. About his spending. Not only spending. She paused. About the way Ryan viewed property. I felt suddenly defensive. He loved this land. I'm sure he did. But David once told me Ryan saw land primarily as stored money. The words hurt because I had recently seen exactly that. $3.8 million. A number typed beside my home. Patricia continued gently. David wasn't trying to punish Ryan. He wanted the land protected from impulsive decisions, creditors' pressure, and anyone who might treat an inheritance as available money before it actually became available. I looked down at David's signature. Why didn't he tell Ryan? He intended to explain more when the time was right. The time never came. No. We sat quietly. Then Patricia opened the binder again. There is something else you need to understand. What David wasn't only protecting the land from developers. My eyes met hers. He was protecting you. I couldn't speak. As long as you are alive and capable of serving Ryan, cannot simply step around you because he expects to inherit. My eyes burned. I thought about David during his final year. Weaker than I had ever seen him. Still worrying about property taxes. Still asking whether I had enough retirement income. Still making lists for repairs he knew he would never complete. I had believed those were the habits of a man who couldn't stop planning. Now I understood some of those plans had been for a life he knew I might have to live without him. Patricia slid the old deed toward me. Ryan thinks this tells him what he will someday own. Then she placed the trust binder beside it. But this is what actually governs those 31 acres. I looked from one document to the other. One had given my son enough confidence to buy a $120,000 SUV, the other had been sitting quietly in Patricia's office for 11 years. What happens when Ryan discovers this? I asked. Patricia's expression became serious. That depends on what he has already represented to the lender. I felt the relief disappear. Could he be in trouble? Yes. How much? We need more information. I stared at the binder. Part of me wanted to protect him immediately. Call the lender, explain the misunderstanding, find some way to make it disappear. That was the mother in me. Then I remembered Ryan standing in my kitchen saying I had the land, as though my security in old age were simply an unused resource. I remembered Brooke thanking me for help I had never given. And I remembered the affidavit. Future beneficiary. He had already begun spending an inheritance while I was still alive. There's one more thing, Patricia said. I looked up. What? She rested her hand on the closed binder. You asked what Ryan is entitled to as beneficiary. Yes. David was very specific about that. A chill moved through me. Specific how Patricia looked at me for a long moment. Then she said quietly, Ryan does not own what he thinks he owns, Morgan. And being named in this trust does not give him the control he seems to believe is waiting for him. I looked through the window toward the rapidly changing Franklin skyline. For months I had believed the mystery was how Ryan had managed to use my property. Now I understood that was only half the question. The more important question was what David had done years ago to make sure Ryan could never control it. Who really controlled the land? For 11 years, the most important document connected to my property had existed without me truly understanding what it meant. That realization embarrassed me. I had spent most of my adult life working with numbers. I balanced books, tracked expenses, questioned invoices that were off by $3, and refused to sign anything I hadn't read. Yet somehow, when it came to the Ellis family land trust, I had allowed myself to remember only the broadest version of the truth. David was protecting the land. That was what I had told myself. Sitting across from Patricia that morning, I finally understood how incomplete that explanation had been. Start from the beginning, I said. Patricia nodded. All right. She opened the blue binder again and pulled the property map towards us. 46 acres total. Yes. 15 acres remain outside the trust. That includes your house, the immediate grounds, the barn, and several acres surrounding them. Her finger moved to the shaded portion. These 31 acres were transferred into the Ellis family land trust 11 years ago. I studied the map. Most of the northern pasture was shaded. So was the long strip reaching toward the county road. The land didn't look special from my kitchen window. But David had always seen more than what was visible. He saw drainage, road access, elevation, utility corridors, future development. You called this part strategically valuable, I said. It is. How valuable? That depends on what happens around it. That sounds like something David would say. Patricia smiled. He said almost exactly that. For a second hearing that made him feel close enough that I expected him to walk into the room. Then the feeling disappeared. I looked down at the binder. So the trust owns those 31 acres. Yes, and I control the trust. You administer it. That sounds like lawyer language. It is lawyer language. Then give me kitchen table language. Patricia leaned back. In kitchen table language, Ryan cannot sell those 31 acres. I nodded. He cannot mortgage them. Another nod. He cannot pledge them as security for a loan. I felt my shoulders loosen. He cannot give a developer an option on them. Good. He cannot promise access across them. Even better. And he cannot force you to distribute them simply because he expects to benefit from the trust someday. I stared at her. Then what can he do right now? Yes. Nothing with the land. The answer was so simple that I almost didn't believe it. Nothing, nothing. I looked again at the affidavit Ryan had signed. All those carefully chosen phrases suddenly seemed almost childish. Future beneficial interest, substantial family holdings, anticipated interest. He had wrapped himself in the language of ownership without actually owning anything. Then how could the lender accept this? They may not have accepted it in the way Ryan believed. What do you mean underwriting can involve many factors? Income, credit, assets. expected liquidity, guarantees, other sources of financial strength. Patricia tapped Ryan's affidavit. He appears to have wanted them to believe his financial position was stronger than his current income alone suggested, so he used my land to look rich. Patricia hesitated. In simple terms, yes. Yes. I looked away. That hurt more than I expected. If Ryan had come to me and said, "Mom, I'm scared. Business is bad. I feel like I'm failing. I need help," I might still have said no to the car, but I would have listened. I would have fed him dinner. I would have reminded him that losing commissions didn't make him less of a man. Instead, he had gone into his dead father's office and photographed an old deed. Why didn't David simply leave everything to me outright, I asked. He effectively gave you substantial control while protecting the trust assets. But why make Ryan a beneficiary at all? Because David loved him. The answer came immediately. I looked at Patricia. He wasn't trying to disinherit your son. I know. He wanted Ryan to benefit from what the two of you built. He simply didn't want benefit to become control before Ryan was ready. The last 3 words stayed with me. Before Ryan was ready. He was 30 when we created this. Yes. That's not a child. No. Then David must have been very worried. Patricia folded her hands. Do you remember the restaurant investment? Yes. And the condominium in Florida? I frowned. What condominium? Her expression changed. You didn't know? Know what? Patricia hesitated. Then she shook her head. That isn't relevant to what we're dealing with now. Normally I would have pressed, but I remembered my own rule. No new mysteries until I understood the one already sitting in front of me. Stay with the trust, I said. Patricia nodded. David worried Ryan had a habit of treating future success as current money. That sentence hit me hard, because it described exactly what Ryan was doing now. He expected commissions, so he spent. He expected better clients, so he upgraded his image. He expected an inheritance, so he presented it as financial strength. He always believed the next thing would fix everything I said. Patricia's eyes softened. David said something similar. I looked at my husband's signature. What did he say? He said, Ryan doesn't spend what he has. He spends what he believes he's about to have. I closed my eyes. I could hear David saying it. Not angrily, sadly. That was worse. For years I had interpreted David's arguments with Ryan as ordinary father-son friction. David thought Ryan spent too much. Ryan thought David was old-fashioned. David believed debt should be used cautiously. Ryan believed leverage created opportunity. I usually stood between them. Give him room, I would tell David. He needs to make his own mistakes. Apparently David had agreed. He had simply made sure Ryan couldn't make those mistakes with everything we owned. What exactly does beneficiary mean here, I asked. Patricia turned to another section. It means Ryan may receive benefits under conditions established by the trust. May, yes. Not will, not automatically in the way he seems to think. That surprised me. Explain. Some distributions are discretionary. Some depend on circumstances. The trust was designed to preserve assets, not simply hand Ryan the property on a particular birthday. So if I died tomorrow, he wouldn't receive a deed to 31 acres num. I sat back. Ryan had been calculating an inheritance that did not exist in the form he imagined. Who becomes trustee? There are successor provisions. Ryan. Not automatically. I almost laughed. David really did think of everything. He tried. Then Patricia became serious. Morgan, there's another distinction you need to understand. All right. You are not simply the person whose name happens to be on paperwork. What am I, the controlling trustee? She pointed to the document. You have fiduciary obligations. That means your decisions must follow the trust terms and protect its purposes, so I can't wake up tomorrow and give Ryan those 31 acres. Correct. That stopped me. Even if I wanted to, not simply because he asked. I looked at her. For the first time, I understood the brilliance of what David had done. He hadn't merely protected the land from Ryan. He had protected me from being pressured into giving it away. If Ryan begged, if he became angry, if he accused me of being selfish, If I became lonely enough to confuse surrender with love. The trust stood between emotion and irreversible decisions. My eyes filled unexpectedly. Patricia noticed. Are you all right? Yes. I wiped beneath one eye. No. But I understand something now. What David knew me. Patricia waited. He knew I would have trouble saying no to Ryan if Ryan was desperate enough. Her voice softened. I think that was part of it. I laughed through the tears. That stubborn man. He was exceptionally stubborn. You're allowed to say that now. I said it when he was alive. That made me laugh for real. For a few seconds the tension broke. Then I looked at the map again. Did David think Ryan would actually try to take the land? No. The answer relieved me. He didn't think your son was a criminal, Morgan. Neither do I. He worried about pressure, debt, bad decisions, people around Ryan who might see the property as a solution. I thought about Brooke. I didn't believe she was manipulating Ryan. Her surprise at dinner had seemed genuine. Ryan told Brooke I agreed to help. Patricia frowned. With the vehicle? Yes. Did she know about the deed? I don't think so. That matters. I know. The last thing I wanted was to turn my anger toward the wrong person. I had seen families do that. One person lied, and suddenly everyone was guilty by association. I wasn't going to make that mistake. Patricia gathered the papers. What are you going to do? My first instinct. Yes. Drive to Ryan's house and ask him what in God's name he was thinking. And your second, find out exactly what he was thinking, before he knows I know. Patricia nodded. I prefer the second. I thought you might. Not because I want you spying on your son. I know. But because we still don't know what representations he made beyond these documents. I looked at the affidavit. Laura said their review was continuing. Then let it continue. And if they call him, they may. What happens to the car? That depends on the financing agreement. I felt an old instinct rise inside me. Fix it. Protect him. Make the problem disappear. I hated how automatic it was. What if Ryan loses the vehicle? Patricia looked directly at me. Did you tell him to buy it? No. Did you promise to secure it? No. Did you tell him to use your property records? No. Then why are you already thinking about saving him from the consequences? I didn't answer. Because she knew. Because I knew. Because motherhood doesn't stop simply because the child becomes old enough to make expensive mistakes. I stood and walked toward the window. Below us, traffic moved through Franklin. Construction cranes rose in the distance. David had watched this growth coming for years. Suddenly, another question occurred to me. Why those 31 acres? Patricia joined me beside the window. David believed the northern corridor would eventually become important. For development, yes. Did he know something specific? Not at the time, but he understood land. I pictured the long pasture, the road beyond it, the new subdivisions spreading closer every year. What happens if a developer wants it? You decide whether any transaction serves the trust. Not Ryan, not Brooke, no, not a lender, no. I turned toward her. Me. Patricia smiled faintly. You within the terms David and you established. For months Ryan had been asking who owned the land. That had been the wrong question. Ownership was only part of the story. Control was what mattered. And Ryan had assumed that because he was my only child, control would eventually flow naturally toward him. David had made sure it wouldn't. As I prepared to leave, Patricia placed the blue binder into a protective case. I want you to take a copy home. Not the original stays here. Good. I picked up my bag. At the door, Patricia stopped me. Morgan. Yes, there are additional beneficiary provisions we haven't discussed. I remembered the sections I had seen earlier. Distribution provisions, trustee authority. What kind? The kind we should review if Ryan has done more than merely describe himself as a future beneficiary. A chill moved through me. Why? Because David included protections against attempts by a beneficiary to improperly use trust assets. I stared at her. What protections? Patricia shook her head gently. One step at a time. First, find out exactly what Ryan has done. I left her office carrying a copy of the trust. On the drive home, I passed developments where fields had once been. I thought about my husband. I thought about my son. And I thought about 31 acres Ryan had apparently begun counting as his long before I was gone. Ryan believed he had found his future inside an old deed. He had no idea his father had rewritten that future 11 years earlier. And for the first time since this began, neither did I know exactly what would happen when Ryan finally learned the truth. The lie was bigger than the car. For the next 4 days, I did something that felt completely unnatural. I acted normal. I answered Ryan's texts. I asked how work was going. When he sent me a photograph of the black SUV parked outside a new listing, I replied with a simple, "Looks nice." I didn't mention Laura Mitchell. I didn't mention Patricia. And I certainly didn't mention the blue binder now locked in the bottom drawer of my desk. Part of me hated the secrecy. But Patricia had been right. Before I confronted my son, I needed to understand what had driven him to this point. I already knew what Ryan had done. What I didn't know was why he had convinced himself he needed to do it. The first piece came from Brooke. She called me Thursday evening. "Are you busy? I'm making soup." "That sounds better than what I'm doing." "What are you doing?" "Pretending not to look at bills." She laughed after saying it. But the laugh sounded tired. I stopped stirring. "Everything okay?" "Yeah. Just normal married people stuff." Tired. I stopped stirring. "Everything okay?" "Yeah. Just normal married people stuff." I waited. One thing I learned after 41 years with David was that silence sometimes gets you more truth than questions. Brooke eventually sighed. "Ryan's had a rough few months. I know business slowed down, more than he lets people see." I lowered the heat beneath the soup. "How much more?" Another pause. "I probably shouldn't be talking about this. You called me." "I know." Her voice softened. "I'm worried about him." That changed everything. Not angry, not resentful, worried. "Tell me." Brooke exhaled. "He had 3 closings fall apart in 2 months. I knew about one, not 3. One buyer lost financing. Another backed out after inspection. And that big listing Ryan thought he had in Brentwood went to somebody else. The realtor with the expensive car." Brooke gave a humorless laugh. "So he told you about that?" "He did. That one really got to him." I pictured Ryan sitting in my kitchen telling me image mattered. "Has he been paying his bills?" "Mostly." That word again. Mostly. "What does that mean?" "He used credit cards to cover some business expenses." "How much?" "I don't know exactly." "Brooke, I honestly don't." She sounded embarrassed. "We keep some finances separate. Ryan has business accounts. I have mine. But you're worried." "Yes." "Why?" "Because he keeps saying the next commission will fix everything." I closed my eyes. David's words came back immediately. "Ryan doesn't spend what he has. He spends what he believes he's about to have." 11 years later, nothing had changed. "Has he asked you for money?" "No." Then Brooke added quietly, "Not directly." "What does that mean?" "He asked if I could put some household expenses on my card for a couple months." "How many more than I'm comfortable with?" I pulled out a kitchen chair and sat down. "And you agreed?" "At first." "Brooke, I'm not judging you." "I know." She sighed. "I thought we were bridging a temporary gap." "That's what Ryan called it, a cash flow gap." "Of course he did. A problem always sounds smaller when you give it professional vocabulary." "How much credit card debt do you have?" "I don't know the total." "Your card's about 22,000. My stomach tightened. "And Ryan's, I don't know." "Could it be more?" "Yes." I stared at the steam rising from the pot. Suddenly the SUV looked even more absurd. How could he buy that vehicle? Brooke was quiet. Then she said, "I thought you knew." There it was. "I know he bought it." "No. I mean, I thought you knew how." I kept my voice calm. "What did Ryan tell you?" "He said he had finally gotten his financial package approved because of the family assets." "What family assets?" "Your property." Hearing it directly hurt more than I expected. "What exactly did he say about my property?" Brooke hesitated. "He said you were okay with it." My hand tightened around the phone. "Okay with what?" "With him using his future interest to strengthen the financing." I closed my eyes. I never told him that. Silence. Then Brooke whispered, "Oh, he never asked me. Oh my God. Brooke, he told me you and David always intended the land to stay in the family. We did. And that eventually—" She stopped. Eventually what? That eventually it would be his. I swallowed. Did he say I had promised that he made it sound like it was already arranged? I stood and walked toward the kitchen window. Outside, the evening light stretched across the pasture. My property looked exactly as it always had. Ryan's version of it was something else entirely. Not home, not memory, not security, a future balance sheet. What else did he tell you? Brooke's voice had changed now. She sounded less worried and more frightened. He said you didn't want to sell yet, but that the land was basically family equity. Family equity. I'm sorry. You didn't say it. I repeated it, because you believed your husband. Yes. I understood that better than she knew. I had spent 41 years trusting mine. The difference was, David had earned that trust. Did Ryan tell you he went through David's files? No. Did he tell you he photographed an old deed? No. She went completely silent. Brooke, I'm here. Did you know he submitted that deed to a lender? No. The answer came so quickly that I believed her. What did you think he submitted? I don't know. Financial statements, tax returns, whatever lenders ask for. She inhaled sharply. Morgan, are we in trouble? We. That one word told me she still thought whatever Ryan had done belonged to both of them. I don't know. Can someone take your land? No. I could finally say that with certainty. Are you sure? Yes, thank God. Her relief sounded genuine. That mattered. I had been angry at Brooke since the restaurant, though I hadn't wanted to admit it. She liked expensive things. She liked status. It had been easy to imagine her encouraging Ryan. Now I realized I had been unfair. She might have liked the image, but she hadn't created the lie supporting it. Please don't confront him yet, I said. You want me to pretend I don't know for a little while. Why? Because I need to understand how deep this goes. Brooke was quiet. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. It goes deeper than the car. My stomach tightened. What do you mean Ryan has been talking about your land for months? What has he been saying that development is moving toward your area? I gripped the back of the chair. He thinks someone will make you a huge offer. That isn't exactly news. No, but he thinks it's coming soon. How soon, I don't know. What else? Brooke hesitated. He has spreadsheets. I almost laughed. Of course he did. My son, who had inherited his mother's love of numbers and his father's interest in property, had apparently used both to calculate money that belonged to neither him nor Brooke. What kind of spreadsheets? Projections? For what if you sold part of the land? I felt cold. He showed them to you once. What was on them? Different sale values, taxes, investments. She paused. And what you could give him. There it was. Not inheritance someday. Money now. How much, Morgan? How much did my son calculate I could give him at 1,500,000? I closed my eyes. The number itself wasn't what hurt. It was the entitlement behind the calculation. Ryan had sat somewhere with a computer and divided a future transaction involving my property into portions. One for me, one for investments, one for himself, without once asking whether I wanted to sell. Did he tell you what he wanted the money for? Business, meaning he talked about starting his own brokerage. That sounded like Ryan. Always the next level, the next image, the next version of himself. Did you encourage him? No. Brooke sounded offended. Then her voice softened. I told him not to count money before anything was signed. I almost smiled. Good advice. He said I was thinking too small. That sounded like Ryan, too. After we hung up, I let the soup sit untouched. I went into David's office and took out the copy of the trust. I didn't read the legal language. Instead, I looked at David's signature. For the first time, I understood what Patricia meant when she said my husband had been protecting me. Ryan wasn't trying to throw me out of my house. He wasn't trying to steal money directly from my account. What he was doing was quieter. He had begun treating my future decisions as if they were already settled. My land would be sold. He would benefit. Therefore, he could begin building a life around that expected money now. The luxury SUV was only the first visible piece. 2 days later, Ryan came by. He was cheerful, almost too cheerful. Want to grab lunch? Not today. He looked disappointed. Everything okay? Fine. His eyes moved toward David's office. Only for a second. But I noticed. Working on anything I asked. A few leads. Good leads could be. He smiled. Things are finally moving. I nodded. That's good. Ryan leaned against the kitchen counter. You know, I've been thinking about what you said. What did I say about not selling the land? I kept my expression neutral. I've said that many times. I know. He smiled carefully. But situations change. Do they? You don't need to decide anything. I'm just saying you might be surprised what that property could do for you. For me. He had learned to phrase it better. How much do you think it's worth? Ryan's eyes brightened. I'd need proper comps. Guess. He hesitated. Depending on access and zoning, millions. I nodded. And if I sold it, you could invest, travel, buy something easier to maintain. And what would you do? He laughed. Why would I do anything? I looked directly at him. For one brief second, his smile disappeared. Then it returned. I'd help you make smart decisions. Of course. I almost admired how easily the answer came. Instead, I reached for my coffee. I'll keep that in mind. Ryan stayed another 20 minutes. He talked about work. He showed me photographs of a listing. He kissed my cheek before leaving. From the porch, I watched him climb into the black SUV. The engine started quietly. He waved. I waved back. Then he disappeared down the driveway. I no longer believed the vehicle was the problem. It was merely the receipt. The real problem was that somewhere along the way, my son had stopped seeing my property as the place where his mother lived. He saw it as dormant money. Money that would eventually become his. And because he believed the ending had already been written, he had started spending against it before the story was finished. What Ryan still didn't know was that David had written a very different ending 11 years earlier. And the more I learned about my son's plans, the more I wondered whether the trust had been designed not just to protect the land from Ryan's creditors. Maybe it had been designed to protect Ryan from himself. The land was worth more than Ryan knew. The call from Richard Bennett came on a Monday morning, less than a week after Brooke told me about Ryan's spreadsheets. By then I had started looking at every unfamiliar phone number differently. Mrs. Ellis. Yes, my name is Richard Bennett. I'm with Cumberland Ridge Development. I almost ended the call. Developers had been contacting David and me for years. I'm not interested in selling my property. I understand. Then we can save each other some time. Richard laughed softly. I was told you might say that. Who told you? Anyone who has tried to buy land from the Ellis family in the last 15 years. Despite myself, I smiled. That sounds like my husband. I met David once. That changed my tone. When about 9 years ago, I was with another firm then. I vaguely remembered David mentioning a young developer who had come out to discuss road access. He probably told you no. He did. Then you knew him. Richard laughed again. He also told me to call back in 10 years because the land might be worth discussing then. I looked toward David's photograph on the bookshelf. Sounds exactly like him. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Richard paused before continuing. I'm not calling to ask you to sell all 46 acres. That got my attention. What are you asking? Our company is assembling property for a mixed-use development north of your land. I've seen construction. We're still in planning. And one of the challenges is access. I felt something tighten inside me. Access. Patricia had used the same word. Richard continued. There are several possible routes, but one runs near the northern section of your property. The pasture. Yes, ma'am. What do you want? Potentially an easement. I sat straighter. Not ownership, not necessarily. I thought of the shaded map inside the trust binder. 31 acres. The northern corridor. The part David had called strategically valuable. What kind of easement, road access, utility placement, drainage accommodations? Details would need to be negotiated. And what would that do to my land? That depends on design. That's not an answer. No, it isn't. At least he was honest. I'd want my attorney involved. Absolutely. Richard sounded almost relieved. I wouldn't recommend discussing anything without counsel. That separated him from some developers who had contacted us over the years. Why my property location? That's obvious. More specifically, your northern corridor could connect the development to an existing county road with fewer complications than some alternatives. I looked out the window. For 34 years I had seen pasture. Richard saw a corridor. Ryan saw millions. David had somehow seen all three. What is something like that worth? Richard hesitated. We'd need engineering and appraisal work. Give me a range. I'd rather not throw out a number that becomes misleading. Mr. Bennett, if the range begins at $50,000, we can end this conversation. He laughed. It does not begin at 50,000. 100 number 500. Another pause. We have paid 7 figures for strategic access rights in comparable situations. I stopped breathing for a second. 7 figures. Yes. For permission to cross part of my land in simplified terms. I almost heard David laughing. People think land is about acreage, he used to say. Sometimes the most valuable thing about land is where it lets somebody else go. I had treated those words like another one of his surveying observations. Now they sounded prophetic. How many millions that would depend on the final structure? I stood and walked toward the window. Why now? Because development around Franklin has changed. No. Why are you calling me now? Richard was silent. Then he said, because we're moving into a stage where preliminary access discussions make sense. Have you spoken to my son? The question came out before I had decided to ask it. Richard paused. Ryan Ellis. Yes. I know who he is. That wasn't my question. No. The answer was careful. You haven't spoken with him not directly about acquiring your property. Directly. Another word I had learned to distrust. What does that mean? I've encountered him professionally, where real estate events, industry gatherings. Has he discussed my land? Richard was quiet long enough to answer the question without answering it. Mr. Bennett. He has mentioned that his family owns property in the area. My stomach tightened. When several times over the last year. The last year, yes. Long before the SUV. Long before his questions about the deed. Did he tell you I wanted to sell? Not exactly. What exactly did he say? Richard sighed. I don't want to create conflict between you and your son. That conflict already exists. I'm trying to determine its size. Another pause. He indicated that a transaction might eventually be possible. Eventually. Yes. Did he say he had authority to negotiate? No. That relieved me. Then Richard added, but he seemed confident he would be involved. Of course he did. What else? He asked general questions about what developers value in access parcels. My fingers tightened around the curtain. How much they pay. That came up. There it was. Ryan's spreadsheets had not been guesses pulled from the internet. He had been gathering information. How long ago? Maybe 8 months. 8 months. I sat down. Ryan had been thinking about the value of my land before his business troubles became obvious to me. Perhaps the financial pressure hadn't created his interest. Perhaps it had accelerated it. Did you tell him anything specific? Nothing, confidential. General market information. And did you mention Cumberland Ridge? I don't recall discussing our project specifically. I believed him. Mostly. Would Ryan have known about it through the real estate community? Very likely. That was the missing piece. Ryan had heard development was moving toward my land. He understood enough about real estate to know access could be valuable. Then his commission started falling. The expensive lifestyle remained. The debt grew. And somewhere along the way, potential became certainty in his mind. My property would become valuable. I would eventually sell. Ryan would eventually receive money. Therefore, he could begin acting like that future had already arrived. Mr. Bennett, send any proposal to Patricia Coleman. I know Patricia. Good. I'll prepare a preliminary letter. No commitments. Of course. No discussions with Ryan. I understand. He has no authority over the property. Richard paused. Thank you for clarifying that. After the call, I contacted Patricia. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said David was right about the corridor. Apparently. How are you feeling? Like my husband is still 3 steps ahead of everyone. That sounds familiar. I smiled. Then my smile disappeared. Ryan has been talking about the land for at least 8 months. That matters. He knew development was coming. Yes. He knew access could be valuable. Yes. And he started asking me about the deed afterward. Patricia understood immediately. You think he was trying to determine what he would inherit? I think he was trying to determine how certain that inheritance was. That was worse. If Ryan had simply stumbled onto an old deed while looking for a survey, I might have called it opportunistic. But 8 months of questions, market research spreadsheets. That was planning. He calculated I could give him $500,000 if I sold. Patricia was silent. Brooke told me. Did Brooke know the trust structure? No. Did Ryan? I don't think so. Then he's building plans on a foundation that doesn't exist. I looked down at my hands. That's exactly what David was afraid of. Yes. I hated hearing her agree. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop. I searched recent property sales around Franklin. Numbers appeared that would have seemed absurd when David and I first bought our home. 2 million, 4 million, 6 million. The land had become valuable, not because we had done anything spectacular, but because the world had moved toward us. I understood why Ryan was tempted. That did not excuse him. But I understood. To someone drowning in debt, 46 acres might not look like memories. It might look like a rescue boat. The problem was, Ryan had climbed aboard before asking whether it belonged to him. That evening he called. Hey, Mom. His voice was unusually upbeat. Hi. You busy? Not particularly. I was thinking about coming over tomorrow. What for? Just to talk. I looked toward the trust binder. About what? Some opportunities. There was that word. Opportunities. What kind? Property stuff. I nearly smiled. Whose property? He laughed. Come on, Mom. I asked a question. Our family property. There it was again. Our. I let the silence stretch. Ryan filled it. I've been hearing things about development around your area. I've heard things too. You have... For the first time, excitement entered his voice. From who? A developer called me. Silence. This time Ryan couldn't hide it. Which developer? Why, professional curiosity. The same excuse he had used before. I almost laughed. Cumberland Ridge. Ryan inhaled. Only slightly. But I heard it. What did they want? Maybe you can tell me tomorrow. Mom, if they're talking about buying, don't agree to anything yet. I haven't. Good. The relief in his voice bothered me. I can help you evaluate the offer, can you? Of course. This is what I do. No, I thought. What you do is sell other people's property. But I kept that to myself. All right, I said. Come by tomorrow. After we hung up, I sat quietly in David's office. Ryan was coming to talk about the land. I already knew what he would probably say. Sell part of it, take the money, invest, enjoy life. And somewhere inside that presentation would be the future he had already calculated for himself. But Ryan still believed one thing that changed everything. He believed the land would eventually become his. He didn't know that 31 acres belonged to a trust he couldn't control. He didn't know I was the controlling trustee. And he certainly didn't know Patricia had warned me. There were additional provisions governing what happened if a beneficiary tried to use trust property improperly. The next day I would finally ask my son the question I had been holding back. Not how much the land was worth. Not whether I should sell. I wanted to know why Ryan believed he had the right to spend a future that was still mine. And I had a feeling his answer would hurt more than any number on a spreadsheet. It will be mine someday. Ryan arrived at 11 the next morning carrying a leather portfolio. That told me immediately this was not a casual visit. He was dressed for work in a pale blue shirt and dark slacks, and the black SUV sat gleaming in my driveway behind him. Brought lunch, he said, lifting a paper bag. And paperwork. He glanced at the portfolio. Just some information. Of course. I let him inside. We ate at the kitchen table where less than 2 months earlier he had asked me for $30,000 to help buy the vehicle now parked outside. Ryan talked about ordinary things while we ate. A listing in Brentwood. A difficult client. Brooke's latest project. I waited. Eventually, he wiped his hands, moved the lunch containers aside, and placed the portfolio between us. So, he smiled. Cumberland Ridge. I leaned back. What about them? They're serious. You sound very certain. They don't make contact unless they're serious. Richard Bennett told me they're still evaluating access. Ryan's eyebrows rose. You spoke to Bennett himself? Yes. What did he offer? Nothing formal. Did he give you a number? Not really. That wasn't entirely true, but I wanted to see where Ryan went. He opened the portfolio. Inside were maps, printed property records, comparable sales, and several pages of handwritten notes. He had prepared. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Mom. I've lived here 34 years. I've had several once-in-a-lifetime offers. Not like this. He placed a map in front of me. The northern section is different. I looked at it. The same corridor David had protected. The same 31-acre trust property Ryan did not know he couldn't control. Different how access. He pointed toward the county road. If Cumberland Ridge needs a route through here, the value isn't just acreage, it's strategic. That sounds familiar. What nothing, he continued. You could negotiate from a position of strength. You. He corrected himself quickly. You could. I almost smiled. Ryan showed me comparable transactions. He had done his homework. Some landowners had sold outright. Others had granted easements. Numbers ranged from hundreds of thousands into millions. You don't have to sell everything, he said. I know. You could sell 10 acres. Maybe. Or negotiate an access agreement. I know. That stopped him. You know, Richard explained the possibilities. Ryan looked irritated. Developers explain possibilities that benefit developers. And realtors, we protect clients. Am I your client? His expression softened. You're my mother. Exactly. He closed one folder. I'm trying to protect you. There it was again. Protect. A useful word when you wanted to influence someone without admitting you wanted something. From what making a bad deal? I have Patricia. Patricia is an estate lawyer. She understands contracts. She doesn't understand development like I do. I let that statement sit between us. Ryan leaned forward. Mom, you could walk away from this with millions. I already have a home. I'm talking about financial freedom. I already have that too. Not this kind. What kind? The kind where you never think about money again. I studied my son. Ryan, you seem to think I spend a lot of time worrying about money. Everybody worries about money. No. People who spend more than they have worry about money. His jaw tightened. That was unnecessary. Was it? He sat back. I came here to help. Then help me understand something. All right. I looked through the window. The SUV was visible beyond the porch. Tell me how you bought that. His face changed. Barely. But enough. We've been over this. No, you've avoided it. I financed it. I know. What else do you want? The truth. His eyes narrowed. About what? About why my property appears in your financing documents. Silence. It lasted perhaps 3 seconds. It felt much longer. Then Ryan looked away. Who told you? I almost laughed. That was his first question. Not, what are you talking about? Not there must be a mistake. Who told you? Laura Mitchell called me. Ryan went pale. When last week? And you didn't tell me no. Why I wanted to understand what you'd done before giving you the opportunity to explain it away. That's unfair. Is it? He stood and walked toward this counter. This is exactly why I didn't involve you. I stared at him. You did involve me. No, I didn't. You submitted documents about my property. I submitted public records. You submitted my deed. An old public deed. And an affidavit describing yourself as a future beneficiary. That is true, is it? He turned toward me. I'm your only child. I felt something cold settle in my chest. That wasn't my question. Who else would inherit you assumed? Come on, Mom. No. I want you to say it. His frustration rose. Say what? That you used my property to make yourself look financially stronger because you believe you're going to inherit it. I didn't use your property as collateral. That is the line you keep hiding behind. Because it matters legally. And what matters morally. His face hardened. I didn't forge your signature. I know. I didn't put a lien on your house. I know. I didn't take anything from you. You took the appearance of financial security built from something that doesn't belong to you. He shook his head. That's dramatic. Is it? Yes. He returned to the table. Lenders look at the complete financial picture. I disclosed that I'm a beneficiary of family assets. You disclosed an expectation. A reasonable expectation. According to whom reality? I stared at him. What reality? You're 68. The words left his mouth before he could stop them. Silence filled the kitchen. Ryan looked down. I felt as though someone had quietly opened a door inside my chest and let all the warmth escape. Finish that sentence. Mom. Finish it. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? He rubbed his forehead. I mean, estate planning is normal. Families plan for the future. My future or yours both. No. You bought a luxury vehicle based partly on what you expect to receive when my future ends. That isn't fair. Neither is putting a price tag on my life expectancy. I didn't do that. You didn't have to. He walked away again. For a moment, I saw not the polished realtor, but a frightened man trapped inside a life he had made too expensive. Then he said the sentence that changed something between us permanently. It's going to be mine someday anyway. There it was. Plain, unpolished, no underwriting language, no beneficiary terminology, no family equity, just entitlement. I stood. You really believe that? Ryan sighed. Mom, I'm your son. That doesn't answer me. You and Dad built all this for the family. Yes. And I'm the family. So am I. He looked startled. I continued. I am still here, Ryan. I know that. Do you? Of course I do. Because lately you talk about this property as though I'm only the person standing between you and it. That is not what I'm doing. Then why did you calculate how much I could give you after selling it? His face changed. Brooke told you. Yes. He muttered something under his breath. Don't blame Brooke. She had no right discussing our finances. Our finances. I repeated the words slowly. Ryan froze. He had done it again. Our land. Our finances. Our property. Every time he stopped thinking carefully, the truth came out. My finances are not your finances. I meant Brooke and me. No, you didn't. Ryan's voice rose. What do you want from me? An apology because I planned ahead. You didn't plan ahead. You spent ahead. I bought a vehicle for my business. With a financial profile strengthened by an inheritance you don't have. I will have it. I looked directly at him. And what if you don't? He stared at me. What? What if this land is never yours? His expression shifted from anger to confusion. Are you threatening to disinherit me? I asked a question. Because you're angry about a car. This isn't about the car anymore. Then what is it about? Whether you think loving you requires me to surrender ownership of my future before I'm finished living it. His face softened. Mom, I don't want you dead. I know. And I did know. Ryan was selfish in that moment. Entitled, dishonest. But I did not believe he wanted me dead. The truth was subtler, and in some ways sadder. He had separated the inheritance from the death required to create it. To him it was simply a future asset. A number. A certainty. I'm drowning a little, he said quietly. That was the first honest thing he had said all morning. I remained silent. Business has been bad. I know. His eyes lifted. How Brooke? He shook his head. Of course. Don't be angry with her for being worried. I had it under control. No, Ryan. You had a plan to keep borrowing until something good happened. You don't understand. Then explain it. He sat down. For several seconds he stared at his hands. I thought the car would help me move up. And has it? I've gotten meetings I wasn't getting before. That isn't what I asked. He didn't answer. I felt my anger soften. Not disappear, but soften. I wanted to reach across the table. I wanted to tell him we could solve it. That instinct was still there. The same instinct Patricia had warned me about. Instead, I asked, "What do you want me to do now?" Ryan looked at the maps. "Talk to Cumberland Ridge." "I already am." "Seriously, I am." "Then sell the access. And take care of yourself." And he hesitated. "We could talk about helping me stabilize things." There it was. At least now it was honest. How much he didn't say 500,000. Maybe he knew better. Enough to clear the high-interest debt and give me some runway. Using my property. Using family wealth. I shook my head. "You still don't understand." He looked exhausted. "Then help me understand." For 1 second I almost told him. About Patricia. About the 31 acres. About the trust. About the fact that he had no authority over the land he believed would automatically become his. But something stopped me. Maybe it was David's voice in my memory. Maybe it was Patricia telling me we still needed to understand exactly what Ryan had represented. Or maybe I wanted my son to have one final opportunity to tell the truth without being forced by documents. So I kept the trust to myself. "I need time." Ryan stood. "How much I don't know. Cumberland Ridge won't wait forever. Then they won't." He gathered his papers. At the door he turned. "I wasn't trying to steal from you, I know." He looked relieved. Then I added, "But you were trying to spend something that wasn't yours." The relief disappeared. Ryan walked to the SUV. I watched him drive away. An hour later, Patricia called. "The lender has requested formal verification of Ryan's claimed beneficial interest." I gripped the phone. "What happens now?" "Now," she said, "Ryan is going to have to learn what the documents actually say." I looked down the empty driveway. My son had left believing the worst thing that could happen was that I might refuse to help him. He had no idea that the land he had already begun counting as his had never been his to control in the first place. The signature he needed. 3 days after Ryan left my kitchen. Angry, the lender stopped treating his paperwork like a misunderstanding. Laura called me shortly after noon. Her voice was more formal than it had been before. "Mrs. Ellis, I wanted to let you know our verification department completed an updated property search. I put down the book I had been reading, and the deed submitted with Mr. Ellis's file does not reflect the current ownership structure of the 31-acre parcel referenced in his supporting documentation." I already knew that. Still hearing it from the lender made the situation feel more real. What happens to Ryan? "I can't discuss all details of his account, I understand. But we have requested additional documentation from him regarding the beneficial interest he represented." "What documentation?" "Evidence establishing the nature and value of that interest." I almost laughed. Ryan couldn't provide evidence of something that existed only in his imagination. "He doesn't have it," I said. Laura paused. "You sound certain." "I've spoken to my attorney." "I see. The land is held in a trust." Another pause. "Thank you for confirming that. Ryan is a beneficiary, but he doesn't control it." "I understand. And he cannot pledge it. I'll note that." I looked through the window toward the pasture. What happens to the vehicle? That will depend on the final review and the terms of his financing. Could he lose it? Yes. The word landed harder than I expected. It was ridiculous. I had spent weeks furious about that SUV. Now the possibility of Ryan losing it made my stomach tighten. Motherhood is inconvenient that way. You can know your child deserves consequences and still want to soften the ground before he hits it. When will he know he has already been contacted? I closed my eyes. So the clock had started. Ryan called that evening. Not once, 6 times. I let the first 5 go unanswered. On the 6th, I picked up. "Mom." His voice was tight. "Hello, Ryan. Did you talk to Heritage Capital?" "Yes." "What did you tell them the truth?" "What truth? That I never authorized you to use my property." "I never said you authorized me." "You implied enough that they're asking questions. They're overreacting." "Are they?" "Yes." He sounded like a man trying to convince himself. "They're acting like I forged a deed." "Did you tell them the deed was current?" "I gave them a recorded deed. An old one." "I didn't know that." I let the silence answer for me. Ryan continued. "They're asking for proof of my beneficial interest. And I need the estate documents." "No. Mom." No. You haven't even heard what I need. I know exactly what you need. You want paperwork that makes the lender comfortable. That's all. All my voice sharpened. You used documents from my home without asking, presented my property as part of your financial strength, and now that someone has questioned it, you want me to help validate what you did. I didn't lie. Then why do you need me? Silence. Finally, Ryan said, because they want clarification. Give them clarification. I need you to sign something. There it was. I sat straighter. What? It's not a big deal. Anytime someone tells you a signature isn't a big deal, you should put the pen down. What does it say? It confirms I'm your son and a beneficiary of your estate. My estate or the trust? Another silence. I don't know. You don't know what you're asking me to sign. It's standard language. Bring it to Patricia. No. The answer came immediately. Why not? Because this doesn't need to become some legal battle. It became a legal matter when you submitted property documents to a lender. Mom, please. His voice changed. The anger disappeared. What replaced it was fear. They could call the loan. What does that mean? I may have to pay off a large portion immediately or surrender the vehicle. Then surrender it. You don't understand what that would do. To your finances, to everything. I waited. Ryan exhaled. People know I bought it. For a second I thought I had misheard him. What clients? Other agents? People in my network? I closed my eyes. So if I lose it 2 months later, people will know something happened. There it was again. Image. Not transportation. Not business necessity. Image. Ryan, you're asking me to sign a legal document because you're embarrassed people might find out you couldn't afford your car. That's not fair, isn't it? The car represents my business. No. The car represents the business you want people to think you have. He said nothing. I hated hurting him. But sometimes the truth hurts because the lie has been comfortable for too long. Bring me the document tomorrow, I said. His voice brightened immediately. You'll sign, I said, bring it. Okay. Ryan. Yes, don't mistake my willingness to read something for agreement. His voice cooled. Fine. He arrived the next morning. No leather portfolio this time, just one folder, and no confident smile. Ryan looked tired. There were shadows beneath his eyes. For the first time in months, I noticed gray beginning near his temples. I suddenly remembered him at 6 years old, climbing into my bed after a nightmare. For one dangerous second, every boundary I had built weakened. Then I saw the folder. Coffee, I asked. No. He sat at the kitchen table. I remained standing. Show me. Ryan pulled out a 2-page document. I read slowly. The language was dense, but the purpose seemed clear. It asked me to acknowledge Ryan as a beneficiary with a potential future economic interest connected to family property. I reached the second page. There was a signature line. Morgan Ellis. I placed the document down. No. Ryan stared at me. You didn't even ask questions. I don't need to. It doesn't pledge anything. It validates the picture you created. It clarifies it. No. His jaw tightened. Patricia got to you. This has nothing to do with Patricia getting to me. You've changed since talking to her. I've learned. Learned what I looked at him. Enough to know I won't sign. Ryan stood. This is insane. No. You could fix this with one signature. That is exactly why I won't. What does that mean? If one signature from me is the only thing standing between you and financial trouble, then I wasn't as uninvolved in your financing as you keep claiming. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I continued. You created a financial tree in which my property made you look safer to lend to. I am going to inherit. You keep saying that. Because it's true. According to whom, Dad? My heart tightened. Your father told you the land would be yours. Ryan hesitated. He always said it was family land. That is not the same thing. He would never let this happen. What this? Ryan pointed toward the document. He wouldn't stand there while his son lost everything over technical paperwork. Something inside me went very still. Technical paperwork, you know what I mean. No. Tell me. A deed gets updated. A trust gets created. Whatever. Those are technicalities. I stared at him. He had just said the word. Trust. You know there might be a trust, Ryan froze. Then he looked away, I assumed. Because you asked me months ago. Yes. Why? Because I was trying to understand the estate. My estate. Our family estate. No. I said it quietly. Ryan looked at me. Stop calling things ours because you expect them someday. His face hardened. Dad wouldn't have wanted you treating me like a stranger. Your father wanted me protected. You don't know what he wanted. That hurt. More than I expected. I walked into David's office. For a moment, Ryan remained in the kitchen. Then he followed. I stopped beside David's desk. Do you really want to bring your father into this? Ryan looked at the photograph. His anger faded slightly. I know, Dad. So did I. He believed family took care of family. Yes. And now you're going to let some finance company ruin me because I misunderstood a deed. You didn't misunderstand the deed when you photographed it without permission. Ryan looked down. You were looking for something. I was trying to understand what would happen eventually. No. You were trying to determine what you could use now. He didn't deny it. That silence was almost a confession. I softened my voice. How bad is it? Ryan looked at me. The debt. He nodded. Bad. How bad? Bad enough. Credit cards. Yes. Business loans. 1. Anything else? He looked away. I didn't push. That wasn't the issue today. Then sell the SUV. I'll lose money. Probably. I could damage my credit. Possibly. My reputation could take a hit. Maybe. His eyes filled with anger again. And you're okay with that, no? The answer surprised him. I hate it. Then help me. I am helping you. He laughed bitterly. By refusing to help you build another solution on money that isn't yours. His face tightened. You sound exactly like Dad. For the first time that morning I smiled. I'll take that as a compliment. He didn't. Ryan grabbed the document. At the doorway he turned. If you don't sign this, they're going to think I misrepresented my assets. Did you? I told them I was a beneficiary. Then let the actual documents show them what that means. His expression changed. What actual documents there it was. The moment. I could have told him. I could have said Ellis Family Land Trust, 31 acres, controlling trustee, no authority for Ryan. But Patricia's warning came back. We still needed to know exactly what Ryan had represented, and if the truth was going to come out, it needed to come out in a room where nobody could reinterpret it afterward. I'll attend a meeting, I said. Ryan frowned. What meeting with Heritage Capital? He stared at me. You'll talk to them. Yes. Relief flooded his face. You'll explain I'm the beneficiary. I'll explain exactly what the documents say. He heard only the first half. Thank you, Ryan. But he was already putting the papers into his folder. I knew you'd understand. I watched him leave. He climbed into the SUV and sat behind the wheel for several seconds before driving away. Then I called Patricia. I agreed to meet the lender. Good. Ryan thinks I'm going there to save his financing. Patricia was quiet. Are you no? That word hurt, but it also felt necessary. What do you want me to bring? She asked. I looked toward the drawer containing my copy of the trust. Everything. The current deed. Yes. The trust agreement. Yes. Distribution provisions. I remembered her warning. The protections David had created if a beneficiary tried to use trust assets improperly. My stomach tightened. Yes, all of it. Before hanging up, Patricia asked one final question. Are you ready for Ryan to learn the truth? I looked through the window at the road where his luxury SUV had disappeared. No. Then I thought about the document he had just asked me to sign. But I think I'm ready to stop protecting him from it. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. Ryan believed he was walking into that room to prove he had an inheritance. He had no idea Patricia would be carrying the document proving why he didn't control it. And he had even less idea that his father had written another provision for exactly what happened when a beneficiary tried. The binder on the table. Ryan arrived at Heritage Capital 20 minutes before the meeting. I knew because he texted me. I'm here. Please don't be late. I stared at those words from Patricia's passenger seat as she pulled into the parking lot. Please don't be late. As if I were the one whose reliability was in question. Patricia glanced at me. You all right? No. Do you want another minute? No. I looked down at the dark blue binder resting on my lap. If I take another minute, I might take an hour. We went inside. Laura Mitchell met us in the lobby and escorted us to a conference room. Ryan was already there. So was Brooke. I hadn't expected her. She sat beside him with her purse held tightly in her lap. When she saw me, she gave me a nervous smile. Ryan stood. Mom. Ryan. His eyes moved to Patricia, then to the binder. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. Why is Patricia here? She's my attorney. I thought this was just verification. It is. Ryan looked at Patricia. Do we really need lawyers for this? Patricia remained calm. You've asked your mother to verify a legal interest in trust property. Counsel seems appropriate. The word trust changed Ryan's expression. Brooke turned toward him. Trust property. Ryan sat down. Can we just get started? Laura took the chair at the end of the table. She had several files in front of her. I want to make something clear before we begin. This meeting is intended to clarify representations contained in Mr. Ellis's financing file. We are not here to determine inheritance rights beyond what is relevant to that review. Fine, Ryan said. He looked at me. I just want everybody to understand there was no fraud. Laura didn't react. Mr. Ellis, we haven't made that statement. I know, I'm saying there wasn't. Patricia opened her notebook. Nobody responded. The silence made Ryan visibly uncomfortable. Laura began. The issue is straightforward. During underwriting, Mr. Ellis provided documentation describing himself as a future beneficiary of substantial family real estate holdings. She slid a copy of his affidavit onto the table. Brooke looked down. Ryan did not. The file also contained this deed. Another page. The old deed. The one Ryan photographed from David's office. Laura continued. Subsequent verification showed that this instrument does not represent the current ownership structure of a significant portion of the property referenced. Ryan leaned forward. I already explained that I didn't know there was a later deed. Laura nodded. That is why we requested clarification. And that's why my mother is here. He looked at me. I could almost hear what he wanted me to say. Yes, Ryan will inherit. Yes, the property is family wealth. Yes, everything he implied was essentially true. Instead, I folded my hands. Laura turned to me. Mrs. Ellis, did you authorize your son to submit this deed? No. Ryan shifted. It's public record. Laura raised a hand. Mr. Ellis, you'll have an opportunity to respond. Then she looked back at me. Did you authorize him to represent that he had a guaranteed future ownership interest in the property? No. I never said guaranteed, Ryan interrupted. Brooke closed her eyes. Laura looked at him. Please let her finish. Ryan sat back. Laura asked me another question. Did you agree to use your property directly or indirectly to support Mr. Ellis's vehicle financing number? Ryan exhaled sharply. This makes it sound like I pledged her house. Patricia finally spoke. No one said you pledged her house. Then what are we doing? We're establishing what you actually had authority to represent. Ryan looked at her. I am a beneficiary. Yes, Patricia said. Relief appeared on his face. He turned toward Laura. See? Patricia continued. But that word does not mean what you appear to believe it means. The relief vanished. Brooke looked between them. What does it mean? Patricia placed the dark blue binder in the center of the table. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then she rotated it so Ryan could read the cover. Ellis Family Land Trust. His face went pale. I watched his eyes move across those words. Once. Then again. You knew about this, he asked me. I remembered pieces of it. How long? Long enough to know you should have asked before using an old deed. Ryan looked at Patricia. When was this created? 11 years ago. His mouth opened slightly. Dad did this. Your parents did. Patricia opened the binder. David and Morgan established the trust together. She turned to a tabbed section. Several subsequent conveyances transferred approximately 31 acres into the trust. Ryan stared at the pages. No. Patricia looked at him. No. No, that can't be right. It is. The whole property was in Dad and Mom's names. Originally. I saw the deed. You saw an older deed. Patricia placed the current deed beside it. 2 documents, 2 different realities. Ryan picked up the newer one. His eyes moved rapidly across the legal description. Brooke leaned closer. What does that say? Ryan didn't answer. Patricia did. The Ellis Family Land Trust holds title to the 31-acre parcel. Brooke looked at me. So Morgan doesn't own it. I control the trust, I said. Patricia clarified. Morgan is the controlling trustee. Ryan looked up. What does that mean? His voice was quieter now. Patricia answered with the same simplicity she had used with me. It means your mother administers the trust according to its terms. And me, you are a beneficiary. Ryan nodded quickly. Exactly. An interest as beneficiary is not ownership of the land. But I'm the beneficiary. One of the designated interests, yes. So eventually it comes to me. Patricia looked directly at him. Not necessarily in the form you are describing. The room became completely silent. Ryan stared at her. What does that mean? It means the trust does not require those 31 acres to be transferred outright to you simply because your parents die. Brooke slowly turned toward Ryan. You told me the land would be yours. Ryan ignored her. Dad would never do that. Patricia's expression remained neutral. Your father helped draft these instructions. He wanted the property to stay in the family. Yes. Then obviously I get it. No. The single word landed heavily. Ryan sat back. Patricia continued. The trust was designed to preserve family assets while limiting a beneficiary's ability to expose them to personal creditors, impulsive transactions, or outside pressure. I watched my son absorb that. His face shifted from disbelief to humiliation. Laura asked, for clarity, did Mr. Ellis have authority to pledge these 31 acres? No, Patricia said. Could he grant a lien against them? No. Could he execute an option to sell them? No. Could he promise an easement? None. Could he require distribution of the land? Each answer seemed to make Ryan smaller in his chair. Laura looked at the affidavit. What present economic interest could Mr. Ellis independently assign? Patricia shook her head. Not the land itself. Ryan pushed his chair back. I never said I could sell it. Laura remained calm. You presented the property as evidence of substantial anticipated family wealth. Because it is. That isn't the same as having a presently realizable asset. I never called it liquid. You provided a valuation, a market estimate, of property you do not own. Ryan looked toward me. Say something. I felt my heart break a little. Not because he was innocent, because he was my son. And I could see the exact moment his imagined future was collapsing. What do you want me to say? That Dad meant for me to have it. He meant for you to benefit. Same thing. No. My voice was quiet. It isn't. Brooke spoke before Ryan could answer. You told me Morgan agreed. Ryan turned toward her. Brooke, not now. No. Her voice shook. You told me she knew. I said she knew I was a beneficiary. You said she was helping us. I said family assets helped the application. You let me believe she had agreed. Ryan looked around this table. This is getting blown completely out of proportion. I almost felt sorry for him. That sentence had become his last defense. If the problem felt too large, he tried to shrink it with language. Laura closed one file. Mr. Ellis, our concern is whether the financial profile relied on representations that were materially different from the verified legal structure. I didn't forge anything. No one is saying you did. I didn't create a fake deed. No. I am a beneficiary. Yes. Then where is the lie? Patricia answered. The problem isn't that every individual statement was false. Ryan looked at her. The problem is the conclusion you encouraged other people to draw from them. He said nothing. Patricia pointed to the old deed. You presented a document suggesting family ownership without verifying the subsequent transfer. Then the affidavit. You described an anticipated interest without understanding the restrictions governing it. Then she looked at him. And you treated beneficiary status as though it were equivalent to future ownership. Ryan's voice became defensive. Because that's what Dad always intended. Your father's intentions are written here. Patricia touched the binder. Not in what you remember him saying. That silenced him. Laura asked whether she could copy the relevant trust sections. Patricia nodded. Only those necessary for verification. While they discussed procedure, I watched Ryan. He wasn't looking at anyone. His eyes were fixed on David's signature. Finally, he whispered, "Why didn't he tell me I answered before Patricia could? Maybe he hoped you would learn to stop measuring your future by what someone else might leave you." Ryan looked at me. The anger in his face disappeared. For a moment, he simply looked hurt. Then Patricia turned another page. Her expression changed. I recognized the section immediately. Distribution provisions. Ryan noticed. What is that? Patricia looked at me first. I nodded. She placed the document flat on the table. There is another issue we need to discuss. Ryan rubbed his forehead. What now? Your father anticipated circumstances in which a beneficiary might attempt to pledge, transfer, encumber, or pressure the trustee regarding trust property. Ryan stopped moving. Brooke stared at Patricia. What happens if someone does? Patricia did not answer immediately. She looked at Ryan. This trust contains protective provisions. His face drained of what little color remained. What kind of protective provisions? The kind that affect how and under whose control future benefits may be distributed. Ryan stared at the binder. For the first time that morning, he no longer looked angry. He looked afraid. What are you saying? Patricia rested her finger beside the paragraph David had approved 11 years earlier. I'm saying that discovering you don't control the land may not be the only consequence of what you've done. And in that moment, I realized the meeting wasn't ending with Ryan learning who controlled the property. We were about to learn what his father had arranged to happen if Ryan ever tried to control it anyway. His father had seen it coming. For several seconds after Patricia spoke, nobody in the conference room moved. Ryan stared at the open trust binder, as though the pages had personally betrayed him. Brooke sat with both hands wrapped around her purse. Laura Mitchell had stopped taking notes. And I found myself looking at David's signature. 11 years earlier, my husband had sat in Patricia's office and signed that document. At the time, I had thought we were protecting land. Now I was beginning to understand that David had been protecting something much more complicated. Ryan finally broke the silence. What exactly happens? Patricia turned the binder toward herself. Before I explain it, I want to be precise about one thing. Ryan gave a bitter laugh. Apparently, precision matters now. It always mattered. He looked away. Patricia continued. This provision does not automatically remove you as a beneficiary. Ryan's shoulders relaxed slightly. It does not confiscate your inheritance. More relief. And your mother cannot simply take what was intended for you and give it away because she's angry. Ryan glanced at me. I held his gaze. I had never wanted that. Even now. What does it do? He asked. Patricia pointed to the paragraph. If a beneficiary attempts to assign, pledge, encumber, transfer, or otherwise use a trust interest in a manner prohibited by the agreement, the trustee may suspend direct distributions and place future benefits under discretionary administration. Ryan frowned. English. Patricia nodded. Instead of receiving money or property directly, any future benefit available to you can remain inside the trust and be managed according to its terms. For how long, that depends on circumstances. Who decides? The trustee, subject to the trust agreement and fiduciary duties. Ryan looked at me. So, Mom, in the current structure, your mother has substantial authority. His expression hardened. So she gets to punish me? No. Patricia's voice sharpened for the first time. That is exactly the wrong way to understand this. Then explain how it isn't punishment. Because Morgan did not write this provision last week. Ryan said nothing. Your father included it 11 years ago. He stared at her. And it applies regardless of whether Morgan is angry with you. Brooke finally spoke. So his own actions trigger it? Potentially, yes. Ryan shook his head. I didn't pledge the trust. You attempted to use an anticipated beneficial interest in trust-connected property to strengthen your financial position. I disclosed that I was a beneficiary. You also submitted an obsolete deed. I didn't know it was obsolete. That may matter to the lender. Patricia remained calm, but the trust provision focuses on protecting trust assets and distributions from being treated as available collateral or transferable wealth before they actually become distributable. Ryan leaned back. This is unbelievable. No one answered. He looked at me. You knew, not until Patricia explained it. When after Laura called, and you sat there this whole time knowing this could happen, I knew there were protections. I didn't know exactly how they would apply until we understood what you had done. Ryan laughed bitterly. Convenient. That hurt. But I didn't defend myself. Patricia did. Morgan could not have created this consequence retroactively, even if she wanted to. Ryan looked at her. Then why would Dad put something like this in there? Patricia was silent for a moment. Because he worried about exactly this kind of situation. Ryan's face changed. No. Ryan, no. He stood. My father did not sit in this office planning for me to steal his land. Nobody said steal. That's what you're implying. No. Patricia closed one hand over the binder. Your father was worried you might treat future assets as present resources. Ryan froze. The sentence hit him. It had hit me too when Patricia first explained it. Ryan looked toward the window. That sounds like something Mom told you. It isn't. Patricia's voice softened. David said it himself. Ryan slowly turned back. What did he say I already knew? Patricia looked at me briefly, then at Ryan. He said you had a habit of spending what you believed you were about to have. Ryan stared at her. For once he had no immediate response. His eyes dropped. I remembered the restaurant investment. $40,000 lost, because Ryan believed success would arrive quickly enough to cover the risk. The business expenses, the credit cards, the SUV. Different years, same pattern. Ryan sat down again. He said that about me. Yes. During the estate planning process. His voice became quiet. He thought I was irresponsible. I think he thought you were optimistic in ways that sometimes became dangerous. That was the gentlest possible version. Ryan knew it. So he didn't trust me. I finally spoke. He loved you. That isn't what I asked. No. I swallowed. He didn't trust every decision you might make. Ryan looked at me. The pain in his face almost made me reach for him. Almost. Neither did I understand how worried he was, I said. Ryan's eyes narrowed. You signed it. I did. So don't act like this was all Dad. I'm not. Then you didn't trust me either. I trusted your heart. His expression shifted. But I didn't always trust your judgment. Silence. Brooke looked down. Laura quietly closed the file in front of her, as if recognizing that the conversation had moved beyond underwriting. Ryan rubbed both hands over his face. This is insane. No, I said. What's insane is buying a $120,000 vehicle when your wife is putting household expenses on credit cards. Brooke flinched. Ryan looked at her. You told her everything I told her. I was worried. You had no right. She is your wife. I rarely raised my voice. That time I did. She has every right to be worried when your financial decisions affect her. Ryan stared at me. I continued more quietly. You lied to her too. I didn't lie. You told her I agreed to help. I said you knew about the family assets. You let her believe I had approved what you were doing. Ryan looked at Brooke. She didn't defend him. That seemed to hurt him more than anything I said. Laura cleared her throat. I think we should separate the family issues from the financing review. Ryan laughed. Little late for that. She ignored the comment. From our standpoint, we now have verified information that materially changes how the beneficial interest can be characterized. What happens to the loan? Our review team will determine that. Are you calling it? I can't answer today. Am I losing the car? I can't answer today. Ryan clenched his jaw. I could see his mind searching for another solution. That frightened me, because Ryan's solutions were what had brought us here. Don't, I said. He looked at me. Don't what? Start calculating the next escape. His eyes narrowed. You don't know what I'm thinking. Yes, I do. I had known him for 41 years. You're already wondering what else you can borrow, sell, transfer, or promise to fix this. He looked away. Stop. I have obligations. You have consequences. His eyes returned to mine. Easy for you to say. You're sitting on millions of dollars. The room went still. There it was again. Even now. Even after everything Patricia had explained. I leaned forward. No, Ryan. My voice was calm. I am sitting in a chair. He frowned. The trust holds land. I have a house. I have retirement savings. Those things exist to serve purposes, not to prove how wealthy we are. You know what I mean. I do. That's the problem. I pointed toward the binder. You still see that land as money waiting to be unlocked. It is worth money. So is your wedding ring. Brooke looked up. So are the organs in your body. So is almost everything if the only question you ask is what someone would pay for it. Ryan stared at me. Value and price are not the same thing. That was something David used to say. I hadn't realized until the words left my mouth. Ryan realized too. His expression collapsed for a moment. Dad used to say that. Yes. He looked at the trust. What did he want me to do? The question was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. Patricia answered gently. Grow into someone who could benefit from what he built without being controlled by it. Ryan swallowed. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then he asked, Can this provision be reversed? Patricia answered carefully. It isn't a punishment switch. Future administration can respond to circumstances. Responsible behavior matters. Financial stability matters. The trustee's fiduciary judgment matters. So I'm not permanently cut off. No one said you were. His shoulders dropped. Something between panic and relief crossed his face. But I can't control the inheritance. No. Even after Mom dies, not automatically. He stared down at his hands. For the first time since this began, I saw something change. Not repentance. Not yet. But the collapse of certainty. Ryan had lived as though the ending of his financial story was guaranteed. Eventually the land. Eventually millions. Eventually everything would work out. David had removed eventually from Ryan's control. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Laura took copies of only the documents necessary for verification. Patricia packed the binder. Brooke walked out first. Ryan remained seated. I stopped beside him. Are you coming in a minute? I nodded. As I reached the door, he spoke. Mom. I turned. Did Dad really think I would do something like this? I considered lying. A comforting answer would have been easy. No, sweetheart. He was just being cautious. But David deserved better. And so did Ryan. I think your father hoped you wouldn't. Ryan's eyes filled. I continued. But he loved you enough to prepare for the possibility that you might. Ryan looked away. I left him there. Outside, Patricia and Brooke were waiting. Across the parking lot sat the black SUV. Sunlight reflected from its polished hood exactly as it had the first day Ryan brought it to my house. Only now it looked different. Smaller somehow. A machine purchased to make strangers believe my son had already become the man he wanted to be. The lender would decide what happened to the vehicle. The trust would decide how future benefits could be managed. I didn't need to punish Ryan. That was the part I finally understood. David had not created revenge. He had created boundaries that existed before anyone became angry. Ryan had crossed them. And now the consequences did not need my cruelty to make them real. For the first time since this began, I stopped asking myself how I could save my son from what he had done. I started wondering whether facing it might be the only thing that could finally save him from doing it again. I didn't sell my future to save his image. The black SUV disappeared from Ryan's driveway 11 days after the meeting at Heritage Capital. He didn't tell me beforehand. Brooke did. She called on a Wednesday afternoon and said simply, "It's gone." I knew exactly what she meant. The car, yes. I sat down at my kitchen table. For months I had imagined that moment. I thought I would feel vindicated. Instead, I felt sad. How is he humiliated? I closed my eyes. Not angry. Oh, he's angry. Brooke gave a tired little laugh, but mostly humiliated. Heritage Capital's review had concluded that Ryan's financial profile could not be supported in the way originally presented. I never learned every detail of the agreement, nor did I need to. What mattered was simple keeping the SUV would have required money Ryan did not have. So he surrendered it. There were fees, there was financial damage, and there was exactly the kind of public embarrassment Ryan had been terrified of. People noticed. A client asked where the SUV was. Another realtor apparently joked that Ryan's midlife crisis lease had ended early. Ryan came home furious. Not because he missed the massage seats, because the image had cracked. He thinks everyone is talking about him, Brooke said. Are they? Probably less than he thinks. That sounded right. Most of us spend far more time worrying about other people's opinions than other people spend having them. Is he blaming me? Brooke hesitated. Sometimes. I appreciated her honesty. And you know, Brooke, you don't have to protect my feelings. I'm not. Her voice became firmer. I'm angry with him. I waited. He lied to me, Morgan. I know. I've spent weeks going through our finances. There were balances I didn't know about. Business expenses, credit cards, how bad. The word no longer shocked me. What are you going to do? I told him if we stay married there are no more hidden accounts. That sounds reasonable. And counseling. Did he agree eventually? I smiled faintly. That sounds like Ryan. Brooke became quiet. Then she said, "Thank you for not blaming me." My throat tightened. I almost did. I know. You do? I saw the way you looked at me at that restaurant. I winced. I'm sorry. Don't be. If I were you, I might have thought the same thing. I should have asked before deciding. We both should have asked more questions. That was true. After we hung up, I walked outside. The pasture was bright beneath the afternoon sun. Nothing about the land looked like millions of dollars. It looked like grass, trees, fences, memory. And yet, the next decision I had to make concerned more money than David and I had ever imagined possessing when we first moved there. Richard Bennett had submitted Cumberland Ridge's preliminary proposal. Patricia and I reviewed it together 2 days later. The company wanted access across part of the northern corridor. Their first proposal was broad, too broad. Road access, utilities, drainage rights, construction access, future expansion language. Patricia circled entire paragraphs. No, I laughed. You sound like David. That's because David trained me to expect developers to ask for everything. Richard's company was not doing anything improper. They were negotiating. So were we. I made one thing clear from the beginning. I don't want to sell the 31 acres. Richard looked surprised. We were sitting in Patricia's conference room with maps spread across the table. Even at the right price. What is the right price for something I don't want to sell? He smiled. Fair point. I'll discuss limited access. That makes the project more complicated. Then your company can use another route. Richard studied me for a moment. You understand that could reduce the value of the agreement? Yes. That answer seemed to change the negotiation. For the first time, I wasn't behaving like someone dazzled by money. Because I wasn't. Money mattered. Of course it did. But David and I had spent decades building security. I wasn't going to destroy that security simply because someone finally put enough zeros on paper. Over the next several weeks, Patricia Richards' team engineers and surveyors worked through alternatives. The final arrangement looked nothing like the first proposal. Cumberland Ridge would receive a carefully defined easement through a limited section of the northern corridor. The access width was restricted. Utility placement had boundaries. Construction responsibilities were specified. Drainage protections were included. Expansion required additional approval, and the trust retained ownership of the underlying land. The payment was substantial, more money than I had ever received at one time. When Patricia showed me the final figure, I stared at it. David would have pretended not to be impressed. Patricia smiled. Then he would have gone home and recalculated it 6 times. I laughed. Yes. The money belonged to the trust under the structure of the transaction. That mattered to me. I wasn't suddenly carrying millions in my checking account. The value remained protected, managed, purposeful. Exactly as David intended. I did receive legitimate income and benefits available to me under our estate structure, and I made a few decisions for myself. I repaired the roof, replaced the old heating system, fixed the barn, and after 23 years I finally remodeled the kitchen. Nothing extravagant. David would have approved of everything except perhaps the countertops. He would have complained about the price for 6 months. Then Ryan came to see me. He arrived in Brooke's sedan. I noticed immediately. He noticed me noticing. Don't say it. I wasn't going to. Yes, you were. I was going to offer coffee. He followed me inside. For several minutes we talked about nothing. Then Ryan saw the contractor estimate on my counter. You're remodeling, yes. With the Cumberland Ridge money partly. His expression changed. I knew what was coming before he spoke. So the deal happened. The easement agreement did. How much? That isn't your concern. His jaw tightened. I'm not trying to take anything. I didn't say you were. I'm just asking. And I'm choosing not to answer. He looked toward the window. I could see him fighting the old instinct. Calculate, estimate, project. Finally he said, I need help. My heart sank. How much? About 80,000 would stabilize everything. There it was. Not 500,000 anymore. 80. Smaller. More reasonable. Still not mine to solve. What does stabilize mean? Clear the worst debt. Catch up. Give me room. Room to do what rebuild. With my money. Mom. No. He stared at me. You didn't even think about it. I've been thinking about it since before you asked. His face reddened. You just got paid millions. The trust did. You control the trust. That doesn't make it my personal checking account. You could help me. Yes. Hope appeared in his face. I continued. But I won't help you this way. The hope vanished. So you'd rather watch me struggle. I'd rather watch you solve a problem without turning my property into the solution. What's the difference if you have the money? The difference is what happens the next time. There won't be a next time. You said the SUV would fix your business. That was different. You said the next commission would fix your credit cards. He looked away. You said the land would eventually make everything easier. Silence. I stepped closer. Ryan, in every rescue you've planned depends on something outside you arriving before the consequences do. He said nothing. I love you too much to become the next rescue. His eyes filled with anger. Then slowly the anger changed. Pain. You really won't help. Not financially. He laughed bitterly. What good is counseling when creditors want money? It may help you understand why you borrowed money to impress people you barely know. That's cruel. No. My voice softened. Cruel would be pretending I don't understand why you did it. He looked at me. I do understand. I touched his arm. You were afraid. His expression broke slightly. You thought if people saw success, success would eventually catch up. Ryan looked down. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he whispered, I don't know how to get. For the first time he wasn't asking me to get him out. That mattered. You start by accepting where you are. He nodded faintly. And then you sell what you don't need. Another nod. You stop spending to maintain an image. He closed his eyes. And you pay what you owe with money you actually earn. That could take years. Yes. He looked at me. I didn't look away. Eventually he nodded, not happily, but honestly. Over the next few months, that was exactly what happened. Ryan sold expensive watches and equipment he didn't need. He left several costly networking memberships. He reduced business expenses. Brooke took control of their household budget until they could manage it together honestly. They began counseling. Ryan moved to a smaller brokerage where the overhead was lower. None of it was dramatic. There was no miraculous check. No wealthy stranger. No inheritance. Just consequences. And work. Our relationship remained strained. Some weeks Ryan called, some weeks he didn't. I stopped chasing him when he pulled away. That was new for me. So was understanding that boundaries do not require anger to remain firm. One evening I walked the northern pasture alone. Survey markers from the easement project stood near the fence. Beyond them, construction equipment moved in the distance. The world was changing around my land. It always had been. I thought about the millions Cumberland Ridge might have paid if I had sold everything. I could have taken the largest offer. I could have moved somewhere smaller. I could have paid Ryan's debts 10 times over. Instead, I had kept the land. More importantly, I had kept the right to decide what happened to my own future. For years, I thought protecting my son meant making sure he never fell too hard. David had understood something I hadn't. Sometimes you protect the people you love by refusing to remove the ground beneath their consequences. Ryan lost the luxury SUV. He lost the image he had borrowed money to create. But for the first time in years, he was beginning to build something no lender, developer, or inheritance could give him, a life that actually belonged to him. And perhaps I thought as I looked across those 31 protected acres, that was what David had been trying to leave our son all along. What success really looked like. Almost a year after Ryan surrendered the black SUV, I saw another vehicle coming slowly up my driveway. It was a 6-year-old silver Toyota. There was a small dent near the rear bumper. One headlight looked slightly fogged, and when Ryan stepped out, I smiled before I could stop myself. He noticed. Don't. I didn't say anything. You're thinking it. What am I thinking that Dad would approve of the car? I laughed. Your father would ask what you paid, whether you negotiated, and how much life was left in the tires. Ryan looked down at them. I checked the tires. Then he'd be proud. That was the first time we had joked about David together in months. Something about it felt good. Not normal exactly. We were not back to normal. I wasn't sure I wanted us to go back. The old normal had contained too many assumptions, too many things neither of us said. What we were building now had to be different. Ryan walked onto the porch. You busy? I was going to make coffee. Got enough for 2, I usually do. Inside, he sat at the kitchen table. That table had seen nearly every version of our family. Ryan doing homework, David calculating survey measurements, birthday cakes, arguments, condolence casseroles after David died. And eventually, the conversation where my son tried to convince me that selling my land could solve his problems. That morning, Ryan brought no folder, no maps, no property records. He didn't ask about Cumberland Ridge. He didn't ask about the trust. He didn't ask what the easement had paid. Most importantly, he didn't ask what he might someday inherit. He asked about my tomatoes. I almost laughed. The deer ate half of them. You need a better fence. Are you volunteering? He looked toward the window. I might be. We drank coffee. Ryan told me about work. He had left the brokerage where he had spent years trying to enter the luxury market. His new office was smaller, mostly residential homes, first-time buyers, families relocating for work, older couples downsizing. I closed 3 houses last month, he said. That's good. They weren't million-dollar listings. Did the checks clear? He smiled. Yes. Then they sound like excellent listings. He nodded. A year earlier that joke would have offended him. Now he understood it. How are the debts? I asked. Ryan rubbed the side of his mug. Still there. I appreciated the answer. No pretending. How bad? Better. That's different from gone. I know. He looked at me. I should have them under control in about 2.5 years if things stay steady. That long I could do it faster. But I'd probably end up doing something stupid again. I smiled faintly. That sounds suspiciously mature. Don't get used to it. We both laughed. Then he became serious. Brooke and I are doing better. I'm glad. Counseling helped. Don't tell her I said this, but she's a smart woman. She knows. I suspected she might. He smiled. Then his eyes moved toward David's office. I was angry at him for a long time. I knew immediately what he meant. The trust. Ryan nodded. At first I thought he had set a trap for me. I didn't. I know that now. He looked down at his hands, but sitting in that conference room and hearing Patricia explain what he'd written, he shook his head. It felt like Dad had reached out of the grave to tell everyone he didn't trust me. I felt a familiar ache. Your father trusted you with many things, not the land, not without protection. Ryan gave a small laugh. That's a nicer way of saying it. Maybe. I reached across the table. But he didn't trust me completely either. Ryan frowned. What do you mean? The trust protected me from my own weakness. You weren't irresponsible. No. I squeezed his hand. But I loved you. He stared at me. And David knew that if you came to me desperate enough, I might give you something I shouldn't. Ryan's eyes dropped. So he protected the land from both of us, in different ways. We sat quietly. Then Ryan asked, "Can we walk where?" He nodded toward the fields. I knew where he meant. We put on jackets and headed outside. The morning was cool. The grass was damp beneath our shoes. We followed the old path past the barn and toward the northern pasture. The Cumberland Ridge project was visible beyond the trees now. A new road curved toward the easement corridor. The agreement had changed the edge of the property, but far less than selling it would have. Most of David's land remained exactly what he wanted it to remain, ours to protect. Ryan stopped near the old oak tree. Dad used to bring me here. I know. He'd talk about property lines. I laughed. Your father could turn a picnic into a seminar on property lines. Ryan smiled. I hated it. I know. I wish I'd listened. I looked at him. To the property lines, to everything. His voice had changed. We stood beneath the tree. Ryan pushed his hands into his jacket pockets. Can I tell you something without you trying to make me feel better? That depends on how bad it is. He smiled briefly. Then he looked toward the distant road. I wasn't really buying the SUV for clients. I waited. I told myself I was. He kicked at the grass. But mostly I bought it because I was embarrassed. About where I was. He swallowed. I was 41 years old, Mom. People I'd started with were opening their own brokerages. One guy I trained was selling $8 million homes. Another had a vacation place in Florida. And I was sitting in parking lots hoping clients didn't notice the warning light on my dashboard. I understood. Not agreed, but understood. So you wanted them to think you'd made it. I wanted me to think I'd made it. That was more honest than anything he had said during the entire ordeal. Ryan continued. I thought if I looked successful long enough, eventually the numbers would catch up. The next commission. He nodded. The next client. Another nod. The land. His face tightened. Yes. I said nothing. Ryan looked at me. That was the worst part. What I started thinking about your land like it was already mine. My throat tightened. I know. I'd hear about development near Franklin and calculate what your property might be worth. I know. Then I'd calculate what I might inherit. I know. He closed his eyes. And somewhere along the way, I stopped hearing how ugly that sounded. I looked across the pasture. Money can make ugly thoughts sound practical. Ryan nodded. I didn't want you to die. I know. He looked relieved. I need you to believe that. I do. I wasn't waiting for you to die. No. I turned toward him. But you were waiting for what would happen afterward. His eyes filled. Yes. That hurt. I know. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan said, I'm sorry. No explanation followed. No but. No justification. Just those words. I'm sorry. That mattered more than I expected. I forgive you. His face changed. But I added. He almost laughed. There's always a but. This one matters. All right. Forgiveness doesn't restore trust automatically. His smile disappeared. I know. The trust stays exactly as it is. He nodded. I'm not asking you to change it. The land remains protected. I understand. And I will never discuss my estate with you because you're pressuring me. I won't pressure you. I hope not. He looked at me. You don't believe me, I believe you mean it today. That answer hurt him. But he nodded. Fair. We started walking again. After a few minutes, Ryan said, Patricia explained something to me. What the discretionary structure? I waited. She said responsible behavior over time matters. Yes. I wanted to tell you I'm not doing all this because I think it'll get me access to the trust again. I stopped. Good. I'm doing it because I'm tired. Tired. Tired of pretending. He looked toward his battered Toyota in the distance. That car is paid for. I smiled. Now you're speaking your father's language. Ryan laughed. It makes a weird noise when I turn left. Your father would definitely approve. We reached the old fence line. Ryan rested his arms on the top rail. Do you know what's strange? What I used to think success would feel like driving something expensive into a parking lot and having everyone notice. And now, last month, a couple bought their first house through me. He smiled. They had 2 kids. They'd been renting for 9 years. I listened. When I handed them the keys, the wife cried. His voice softened. I drove home afterward in that ugly Toyota and felt better than I ever did in the SUV. I smiled. Maybe that's what success looks like. Dad would say success looks like no car payment. That too. We laughed again. And for the first time in a long time, laughter between us didn't feel like something covering a wound. It felt like healing. Later, after Ryan left, I remained outside. The sun had climbed higher. I looked across the 31 acres David had placed inside the trust 11 years earlier. For so long I had thought his greatest concern was protecting the property. Now I understood. David had been protecting choices. Mine. Ryan's. Even the choices neither of us knew we would someday have to make. The trust had protected me from surrendering my future out of guilt. It had protected the land from being converted into quick money. And in the strangest way, it had protected Ryan from receiving wealth before he understood what wealth could do to him. My son had believed the land was his inheritance. He had been wrong. The land was only property. The real inheritance David left him was harder, a boundary, a consequence, a second chance. And perhaps the opportunity to become the kind of man who could someday receive something valuable without believing its value made him valuable too. I watched Ryan's old Toyota disappear down the road. I didn't know what would happen 10 years from now. I didn't know what the land would eventually be worth. I didn't know what Ryan would someday receive. For the first time, none of those questions frightened me. Because my son was finally learning something I wished neither David nor I had needed to teach him. You cannot build a secure future by spending someone else's. And success isn't what strangers see when you pull into the driveway. It is being able to look at your own life, your own choices, and your own mistakes without needing someone else's money to make them disappear. David hadn't simply